Hello, and welcome to our first episode as Fire in the Cosmos, formerly Obliterate the Construct. I am here with my now new co-host, Sinéad Whelehan. How are you doing, Sinead?
Hi. Hi, everybody, and thank you for listening, those of you who are here. I'm very pleased to be working with Anthony. This is going to be really fun.
I am so excited to have you. We had amazing, serendipitous, synchronistic meeting at Contact in the Desert
Yep.
last week. Was it last week?
Yes.
About last week. And so just a few quick announcements. My former co-host Boutaina, we parted ways amicably. She is off doing her own thing now, and kind of a change in direction for her. So we wish her the best. And if she ever wants to get back in this field, we're always here for her and any other experiencers who want to talk about this stuff. But it just so happened that, literally the night before she gave me her announcement departing from the podcast, I had met Sinead the night before Contact in the Desert got started, and we just had this like amazing connection. I heard her story, her background, her origin story, and the whole time I was thinking, man, this woman's amazing. She would make like the perfect podcast co-host. And she had some interesting synchronicities as well, and I'll let her talk about those. And then the next morning, literally, I got the message from Boutaina saying that she had to go and do her own thing. And I mean, it was just like, it was perfect timing. I don't know if anything like witchy or magical was going on, but I think it was. And I am so excited to get rolling.
Me
So
too.
I'll
Me
give a
too.
brief, yes. Let me give a brief backgrounder on Sinead, and then I'll let her give the details. So Sinead is a UAP consciousness researcher, an explorer, a death doula, director of communications at the Center for the Unification of Science and Consciousness, CUSAC, which is Tom Campbell's organization. She's an educator and a self-proclaimed spider woman. After 15 years as a special needs educator specializing in hearing loss, deafness, and nonverbal autism, Sinead's life turned upside down. She left the full-time teaching profession to focus wholeheartedly on spiritual and consciousness evolution, and on regaining abilities she had as a child. She continues to work with nonverbal children with autism as she finds them compelling evidence of the next-level potential of humanity. Having committed herself to the investigation of human nature, of herself, and of this reality over the past 6 years, Sinead has worked with Grant Cameron, the famous Canadian researcher, Barbara Lamb, and now CUSAC. And Sinead's greatest joys are having telepathic moments with horses and traveling this incredible planet. All right. Did I miss anything there, Sinead?
I don't, well, yes, I mean, there's a ton of other things I could say. There's a ton of things anybody could say about themselves, but on the whole, no, I'm really satisfied with that intro. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I wanted to give you a chance to tell us a bit about your origin story, like where you got started, what were you like as a kid, and we can start from there. And I would love to get into some of your amazing, wild experiences.
Sure. I guess my story when it comes to this field and, my interest in it and my keen interest in it, really, like it matters more to me. This field matters more to me than anything else because of what's happening within the field. I think it's at the precipice of human progress and potential and what could happen on Earth and what can happen for humankind. So, that's a big thing to say, but the original seed of it started when I was a little kid. And I was definitely very, very, very sensitive, like really sensitive. I actually did not realize until maybe in the past year how sensitive I really was. Emotionally sensitive, empathically sensitive, psychically sensitive. So all kinds of things happened to me when I was a kid. I experienced future visions and ESP, and I was able to remote view my Christmas presents every year, and which was fun. I never told either of my parents. I never told my parents about any of this. I had
Wow.
some very, very intense major downloads that were of information that a child would not normally come up with on their own. It was clearly not from me, between the ages of 9 and 11, I think. And some paranormal experiences that I didn't know were paranormal experiences. So in particular, I have this thing about threes. It was never a meaningful number to me, but in accordance with my experiences, it's extremely high as a reoccurring number. Things happen in threes. Beings have showed up in threes. Just the synchronicities in three, it's just bonkers. Like, I could go on and on and on and give you a really long list of examples of how it shows up in synchronicity with my experiences. But I guess the first three that I ever experienced in terms of this thread of conversation was that when I was 4, I was diagnosed with hearing loss. I'm now deaf, so I have 2 cochlear implants, which do make me actually part bionic, part machine, which is pretty awesome. We're living in a time when people can have machines in their bodies, right? So it helps me function better. And I do have mixed feelings about, AI and technology and humanity, but on this level, it's been a huge benefit to me. But when I was 4, I was first diagnosed with hearing loss, and at that point I was hard of hearing. And I remember getting my first hearing aid at age 4 and getting out of the car, and my whole reality changed because I could suddenly hear all these things that I hadn't realized I wasn't able to hear. And I just remember my senses being super sharp. So that was a major pivotal moment for me. Another thing that happened that Grant Cameron thinks is interesting, I have not honestly given it that much thought, but Grant Cameron thinks that this is fascinating, which was that when I was 4 years old, I had a major illness. I got very, very, very sick, extremely high fever, and I felt absolutely amazing. I woke up in the middle of the night with this insanely high fever, extremely ill, and I felt fantastic. I felt like all my senses were at 11, and I had this my mind was really, really, really sharp. So that was another thing that occurred. And then the third thing was that I had a paranormal experience, which I know absolutely happened, even though my parents told me it was just a bad dream, because, of course, that's what they would say. I was in my room, and that night I had asked my dad to help me sleep, quote-unquote, upside down, which meant putting my head where my feet usually were and putting my feet where my head usually was. And the weird thing was that I felt compelled to do this, even though I didn't actually want to do it. Like, there was a part of me that felt like something bad was going to happen, or felt apprehensive about it and kind of stressed, a little bit scared. But for whatever reason, I couldn't stop myself from saying, yes, I want to sleep upside down. And so my dad was kind of like, okay, he still remembers this, actually. And he was like, all right, that's odd. So he just put my pillow down at the foot of the bed, and, I got in, and he left the room eventually after tucking me in and everything. And then the atmosphere in the room changed. It became incredibly electric. There was a weird buzzing sound, and I distinctly felt this being right behind me in my bed, almost pressed up to my body, breathing behind my head and staring at me. And that's what it felt like was happening. It was this very keen sensation of someone being there, like extremely sharp. And the atmosphere in the room was crazy. It was thick with something, electricity, magic, I don't know what. And this buzzing sound was in the air, this kind of droning or buzzing sound. So, so then I had an experience that night with this being, which was not pleasant. It scared the crap out of me. I was terrified. The being was laughing at me and kind of mocking me in this way that felt sinister but also humorous. And so I've had it suggested to me that it could have been some kind of a trickster or an elf or fairy or an elemental or something. I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. But apparently that's something that they do. They kind of disappear through the wall, which is what this being ended up doing. But I feel like that scary experience was so terrifying for me and so memorable and affected my senses, my body, my mind on such a major, profound level that I never, ever, ever forgot it. And I think it broke me through into something. I think that was the beginning of all of the other experiences that ended up happening to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How old were you again at that time?
This was all when I was 4. All when I was 4 years old. The hearing loss, the fever, the paranormal experience. Yeah. Those 3 things happened when I was 4. And then I continued being pretty psychic and sensitive and all the rest of it until I was a teenager. And then I started to get, kind of disconnected from myself, right? Like starting to look for external connection rather than the internal connection that I'd had pretty intensely the whole time I was a child. So, then I became more and more disconnected from that part of myself as I got older. I'm sure many, many people can relate to that. It happens through trauma or stress or, societal messages that are not healthy for us that teach us how to be discombobulated and disassociated from
Mhm.
ourselves. And then at the same time, all the way through my 20s and so on, I felt this extremely strong desire to, quote unquote, get back to how I was when I was a child. I really, really felt like this was extremely important for me to do. And I didn't even know what that really meant. I didn't know what exactly I needed to get back to or how I was going to do this. It was just this driving feeling. And so
Yeah.
that led me to seek and seek and seek and seek until I found this community. And I actually didn't even find it. It found me. I was not looking for it at all. I didn't even know ufology existed. I didn't know any of this existed. I mean, that's part of the
Where
story, right? Is that it just showed up in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you into any other sort of like esoteric or paranormal things growing up in between that time period?
Not at all. I mean, the closest thing, and not that I didn't have an interest in it, I always liked magic, and my father is an artist, and he always encouraged my imagination. My parents gave me wonderful imaginative books to read that were all actually quite esoteric, which is kind of interesting.
Huh.
I've gone back and started collecting some of the books that I had when I was a kid because they had a really big impact on my imagination, my creativity, which also has to do with connectivity, right? Being able to get into that right brain space. So those books had a major impact on me. And I was also a writer and I wrote a lot of stories as a kid. So in that sense, yes. But then as an adult, no. I mean, I really was not thinking about it. I thought outer space was, it made sense to me that Earth was not the only so-called civilized planet in the universe. That made no sense to me at all. I just thought, no, there has to be. I mean, the universe is a massive, massive place. We don't know what's really out there. It's ever expanding. How is it possible that we're the only intelligent life? It just makes no sense. So I thought that. I thought that UFOs were probably real and that extraterrestrials were most likely out there. But that's really it. I loved E.T., I loved Fire in the Sky, I loved movies like that. I would rewatch them, but nothing that was significant to me enough to make me go, oh, wow, I really have to follow this. But I also think
Mhm.
it was because I became extremely disconnected from myself, and that maybe if I had been able to maintain that connectivity through my life, I might have found the community organically, but rather it literally showed up in my life, or rather extraterrestrials did and told me about it. So here I am.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, I'm not going to let that go without you telling us what happened for it to show up in your life, if you don't mind.
sure. Super long story, but so I was seeking
We
and
got we
seeking
got plenty
for.
of time. So
Yeah, I guess like so many of these stories just take forever. And they're also, one of the things that interests me about them, not just my own, but also other people's, is the fact that they will happen in chains of events. Like one thing will happen and then another thing happens that builds on that and so on and so on and so on. And it just kind of becomes undeniable because it's a linking chain of events that whatever ends up occurring obviously means something. It's like the result of what had happened previously, right? So
yeah.
I had been seeking and trying really, really hard to get back to how I was as a child and, have meaning in my life. And I was basically in that place of, the dark night of the soul. Like, what the hell is all of this for? Why am I here? Like, why is the world this way? Why do humans behave this way? Why do we treat the environment like this? Why do we treat animals like this? Why do we treat each other like this? Like, what is the point of all of this? Because it can't just be, this is me at the time, right? It can't just be about like having a job and paying bills and getting married and then you die. Like there has to be more to this. So I
Mm.
just always had that feeling that there was more, kind of had the sense of there being a curtain in front of me and that if I could just see the curtain and pull it aside, that it would reveal this whole other room full of all kinds of other things. It always felt like it was just out of reach, so I started really
How
in
how did that
earnest.
how did that feeling like align with the world around you, the people around you, your communities? Did you feel separate from them because of
Yes,
that?
yes, 100%. Even though I had friends and boyfriends and all of that, I never felt really part of all of it. I felt always on the outside as if I was observing humans. I wasn't really like in it. I couldn't be. It just wasn't, it just didn't feel comfortable to behave, I guess, the way we're conditioned to. And also, not that I didn't, because I definitely did. You know, you kind of have to, right? Like there's no other place to go sometimes with your behavior. You have to just do the norm, you know. But I was never very good at being normal, and it always felt awkward to me. Whereas here in this community, it feels 100% me. You know, it feels very much like my language, my way of thinking, my tribe. So, yeah.
Yeah. So what happened from there?
From where exactly? Help me.
You said you felt separate. You felt like you were an outsider looking in.
Okay.
So what actually started to happen for you?
Well, again, you know, seeking, like, you know, tried being a yoga master, didn't get too far with that, but I tried it. I went to an ashram, I did that whole thing. I became a Tibetan Buddhist, moved into a Buddhist temple, shaved off my hair, gave away everything I owned, was training to be a monastic, dropped out of university, and then had to escape in the middle of the night with after having had stomach surgery, because it was actually a cult, I found out a few years later. But that was an interesting experience.
What?
And, you know, just like a whole bunch of different traveling, learning as much as I could. But for some reason, the esoteric thing just never, I don't know, it just didn't come into my sphere of experience. I can't explain why. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be until the particular time that it did happen, which was in 2017. So 2017, I'm just having the dark night of the soul. You know, what is all this for? Why am I here, right? And I started thinking about about traveling, and I really want to go somewhere new. So I try to go to a new country every year, or at least I did before COVID, and now everything's very different. But before COVID, I did. And so my mom had been to Peru, and she had said it was this really incredible place. And I didn't really, you know, I mean, it wasn't that I didn't want to go to South America. I just hadn't really thought of going to South America. And then all of a sudden, Peru just seemed to be in my face. Like I kept having Peru synchronicities, although I didn't know that that's what they were called. I didn't know synchronicities were a thing. But I just remember thinking, gee, Peru seems to be just everywhere. You know, like I'd walk into a bookstore and it would be the first book that I saw, like right at the front would say Peru in huge letters, or I'd get a cup of coffee and it would be Peruvian coffee, or I'd get whatever, right? It's just these little things. But there were so many of them, I just started thinking that's a little bit weird, or maybe that's odd. But going, oh, it's nothing, right? And then a close friend of mine and a colleague said that he wanted to go to Peru. This was out of absolutely nowhere. This is a guy who'd never left North America, really. And so he's saying he just wants to go to Peru. And I'm thinking, okay, this feels like a sign. I remember having some sort of sense of that. Even though I wasn't using that language, it felt like a sign, right? So I thought, okay, what the hell? You know, why not? My buddy wants to go with me. I'll make it happen. And so it just happened incredibly easily. You know, just like a red carpet was being rolled out in front of me to go to Peru. So I'm totally depressed. I'm having a dark night of the soul phase of life. And I arrive and it's like immediately I feel amazing when I'm in Peru, which is very interesting. Like as soon as I touched the land, I felt energetic and vibrant and totally mentally alive and spiritually alive and emotionally alive. It was really interesting. And then a whole bunch of stuff happened in Peru. Peru itself, that whole trip was just, it's a very long story. But in terms of this particular thing, I went to do a tour of the Sacred Valley of the Inca, and I'm not a touristy person, so this is a small group, a spiritual tour. It was amazing. Absolutely loved it. Indescribable. Really amazing. And then after that, the second half was to go into the jungle on retreat. And I had never done any psychedelics at all, but I just went straight for, I call it just going straight for the mothership. That's really what it felt like. And I wanted to take ayahuasca. I wanted to break through whatever this was that I was experiencing, right? And I wanted to get back to how I was as a child. So I was willing to do anything that would just shake me out of this rut I felt like I was stuck in. And so ayahuasca felt, you know, intense enough. And it was, let me tell you, it's pretty intense. Absolutely worth it. Incredible experience. So I was in the jungle with a small group of people at a very, very, very rustic retreat center, which is what I wanted. I wanted to be, I didn't need anything fancy. I just wanted to walk around barefoot all day and, you know, be spiritual, basically, is what I wanted. So, so I was put in hut number 3. We were supposed to take ayahuasca after 3 nights, and then we were going to take it for 3 nights. Like the 3s were all there. I'm kind of going, there's a lot of 3s. This is weird. And I was noticing that. So it's kind of like spirit was tapping me on the shoulder, going, like warming me up for what was going to come. I was starting to clue in on a conscious level to patterns of 3s, synchronicities, how I felt being in Peru, how different I felt, not really being able to identify why. Like, I'm a seasoned traveler. I love traveling. It was not travel excitement. It was next level. And then I took ayahuasca, and so the first night, zip happened. Absolutely nothing happened. And I thought I was being open and receptive and the whole thing. You know, I'm here. Like, come talk to me. Come and reveal what it is I need to know. You know, nothing happened. I actually fell asleep, and then I got scolded by the shaman the next day. And then second night, in Spanish, but I still understood I was being scolded. And then on the second night, same thing. I took more ayahuasca. Nothing happened. I'm lying there. I'm here. Come and speak to me. And again, nothing. So I'm thinking, oh shit, you know, did I come all this way and nothing's going to happen? Well, oh my God, the third night, I took a little bit more ayahuasca, and wow, like it was just immediate. I was in another dimension. I could not see the Mallorca, the ceremonial hut anymore. I couldn't see anyone around me anymore. I couldn't see the jungle anymore. It seemed like I was inside a UFO. Like I could hear it humming. I could see the light all around me. There was an incredible purple light that kind of indicated the shape and size of it. It was round. It was quite large. It was not the size of the Mallorca. It was bigger. And then I'm omitting a lot of details, but essentially I met extraterrestrials. So I was inside this UFO, and then I was outside of it being greeted incredibly enthusiastically by this group of light beings who were saying to me, finally you can see us. Finally, right? Finally you're here. Finally you can see us. It was extremely joyful. It was extremely celebratory, and overwhelming happiness and joy that I could see them and that they could see me. And so it was like a homecoming or something. It really felt like that. And so then they started inviting me to go up, is how they were putting it. Like, we're going to take you up, we're going to take you up, and we're going to show you things. But wow. Ayahuasca is so intense that my body was getting distracted by the physical experience, and I kept getting what felt like pulled back down into my body from somewhere up above my body, and being pulled physically back down into it. And this was very distracting. So I had to say to them, I'm really sorry, I can't go with you. And I was also overwhelmed, and I didn't know what was happening. And I thought I was creating all of this, right? Like, I thought, this is my mind creating this experience.
In the moment you were thinking that?
I was thinking that. I mean, not consciously at the time, but very soon afterwards, I thought, wow, like I really gave myself a far out experience, because I imagined all of this stuff, and I really thought my mind had created it, right? And maybe it did, I don't know, but that wasn't really my experience. And then what's happened ever since then indicates.
Wait, hold on, sorry. Can we stick on that for a bit? I have some questions on that experience.
Go
we'll
for
jump
it.
on. So you said that you suddenly felt that you were inside a UFO.
Yeah.
Can you describe, like, was there any transition? Was there any movement or anything that you felt? Or was it like an entering an out-of-body state? Can you explain that?
So it felt like there was a sort of transition phase of moving into what felt like another dimension, essentially. The reason why I say that is, okay, so the way it works is you take the ayahuasca, it's ceremonial, and then there's 2 shamans, at least in my case there were 2, father and son, and they came from a lineage of Peruvian shamans, and they were Peruvian themselves. That was important to me, and it was also important to me to meet ayahuasca on the land where the vine comes from. So I feel like that probably added some potency. Anyway, so then you take the ayahuasca, and then you go to your own mat, and you lie down, and you're listening to the shamans chanting. And they're chanting what's called icaros, which are ceremonial songs to call in the spirits, right? To call in all the intelligences around us. to come and assist humans with what they're trying to do, which is essentially healing and consciousness evolvement and transformation, right? So everyone there was asking for help in a spiritual way, and they're calling in the spirits, please come and help these people. So what I saw was that the shaman...
Did you partake in the Icaros as well, or is it just the shamans who do that?
No, you have to know them, and they're all in Spanish. They're very old, and it's the shaman's place to sing them. So you're just receiving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you're receiving, and you're waiting for whatever's going to happen. And I had no expectations at all. Like, I really, really had no idea. I didn't do any reading on all the effects that people experience from ayahuasca other than the physical. So I knew how to be healthy and safe and, make sure that it was an ethical place that was going to take care of me. But I didn't read a whole bunch of, plant medicine stories. I didn't read Terence McKenna. I didn't look for any information that might influence what I was looking for. I wanted to go in as a blank slate, right? So the shaman's voice became this purple light that was very similar to the light of the UFO. And it started off as an origin point on the floor where he had been sitting. So, he disappeared, and then I see his voice as a physical, as light, as a spiraling purple light, go from the floor diagonally, way, 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 way up into the universe. It was almost as if I was seeing how his voice was calling the other beings in, like a message that's being beamed out, right? So
that element of synesthesia, where you have these different senses that seem to blend within one another, whether it's seeing sound or hearing color, things like that. I've come across it a lot in these altered states, and it's pretty fascinating. There's something to it for sure.
It is very fascinating, and it was also just kind of moving and beautiful, seeing his voice, which was so resonant and powerful, and the sound of this Icaro that he was chanting at the time that was so old, and it was just them singing, these two low male voices singing and chanting, and it was just really amazing. And then to see it become this purple light was just something else. So my vision kind of followed the light. And then I'm sitting on a grid. And I told you about this before. It was like I was just somewhere out in the universe. It wasn't black. It was filled with stars. And I'm sitting on a grid that was made of light. It was coming out from under my body. And it looked like... just a regular grid, but every single line was light, and every time another line touched that line, it was a spot of light. So it was like watching this luminescent grid just go out and out and out forever and ever and ever underneath me, and then that became me. And I was also sitting on it. I was cross-legged, just like I was in so-called real life, like in the human 3D dimension. My body in the Mallorca was sitting up cross-legged. And so then I'm on the grid cross-legged, and then suddenly I'm on the floor of the UFO cross-legged, and I can see, the grid is gone. I can't see the Mallorca. I can't hear or see anyone else. I'm just in this UFO by myself. And then suddenly I'm outside of it, being greeted by all these beings. They asked me to go up with them. I can't do that.
Suddenly you were outside of the UFO?
Yeah. First I'm inside it, then I was outside of it. And they were all lined up in front of it, and they were greeting me. Yeah.
So you saw the craft from the outside at that point?
Vaguely, not really. It was really, they were filling my field of vision. All these beings that were made of light, they were all filling my vision. So the UFO was kind of behind them, but I couldn't really see it. It was very psychedelic, right? The whole thing was very, very vibrant, very sensory. So I'm not really focusing on details the same way that I would if I was just in the 3D.
Yeah. Wow. And what were you feeling in that moment when it was happening?
Incredible joy. I mean, it was really I've never experienced anything like it. It was like I had been away for 10 years or 20 years and had come home to my family, and they were just I
know that feeling.
It was like that. It really was. I mean, it felt like a homecoming. It felt like I was being greeted again. And they were saying, finally, you can see us, finally, they'd been waiting, right? And so they were extremely excited, and I felt it. I mean, I felt it a lot. It was very intense. It was very loving, joyful, exciting, very moving. The love was just something else, and that's continued in my experiences, that indescribable love. I mean, I used to read about it in books, people having experiences with God or angels or, the spirit of a loved one, and it filling them with this feeling of indescribable kind of universal love. That's what I've experienced many times with these beings.
Yeah.
So
it's this
anyway,
like
the first
ecstatic
time was in that
feeling.
vision. Yeah. So anyway, so then I told them I couldn't go up with them, and we had interacted for I had no sense of time. I don't know how long it was, but it was definitely very meaningful and very much like a recognition of each other. And then they invited me to go up. I couldn't do it, and so they said, "Don't worry, this is your invitation." And then I felt them leaving. And then a whole bunch of other things happened that are not necessarily ET related. They're more NHI related, but yeah. So then the next
Sorry,
day...
what distinction do you make between ET and NHI?
I don't know. It's like, I guess I'm calling the light beings ETs because there was a UFO they were associated with that I was in. Then the other things were much more nature spirits, land spirits. I don't know. I saw this enormous winged being in a tree outside of my hut at the end of my ayahuasca experience. It sat there for about 3 hours. It was translucent.
Wow.
Yeah. And I kept like pinching myself and looking at it. Like, is it really there? Maybe it wasn't really there, but that's what I saw. And it was there for 3 hours. So I don't know. I mean, there were a whole bunch of other really incredible things that happened in Peru. But in terms of the beings, that's when I officially first met them. Yet I came home and thought, oh, I made that up. I imagined that entire thing. Like, why would I have done that? Right? So there's a little funny beeping sound going on. I can hear that. In any case, I went home and I was very, very, very puzzled by the fact that I had made that up because I didn't have any involvement in this community, didn't know anything about ufology, didn't know it existed, didn't know anything about ETs. So why would I have invented something for this experience that I really was not involved with, was not following, was not reading about, was not thinking about,
Yeah.
So that kind of stuck with me.
Did you talk to the shamans about it afterwards?
No, they were fluent in Spanish. We had a translator, but the shamans they needed to be in retreat for a lot of it. They really only came out when it was ceremony time because that was their role. Like, they weren't really supposed to socialize with us. It's part of their practice and how they do things. But also they spoke only Spanish, and I speak very minimal Spanish, unfortunately. It's my favorite language, but I'm not fluent yet. So
was there any like evidence or like any apparent information that you gathered from anyone else who was there that suggested that they may have experienced something similar or anything like that?
Yeah.
Or did you feel like it was just you who experienced it?
No, everybody had their own experiences, but my good friend, whose mat was beside mine, maybe about arm's length away, he didn't tell me this for 2 years because it freaked him out so much. But he said that when that night that we were all, the night that I had this experience, nothing was really happening for him. And so he was observing everyone else. And he said that 2 years later, he told me that he saw a huge extraterrestrial standing at the foot of my mat.
Whoa.
And this is a guy he is not into any of this at all. Like, the ayahuasca thing was a one-off for him. He calls that like an adventure or something he'll never replicate. No spiritual interest, major skeptic. And he told me that. So I thought,
wow.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. 2 years later, but he did tell me. And then also all these crazy synchronicities that happened after I got home. I mean, it was just, the whole thing was really weird. Yeah.
But did you get any other details from him besides just what he said, like seeing something there?
Just that one thing.
What?
I know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what happened after that with the synchronicities? Like, did you feel they were connected?
So I went home thinking about the trip, really affected by all the incredible things that had happened, and pondering it and trying to integrate it and make use of it, because I was trying to, again, get over this dark night of the soul phase I was in, this depression, this kind of like, what am I doing with my life? What is all this for way of thinking, right? I was really trying to break out of that. And the trip had been amazing, but I didn't really know how to make sense of it, how to bring it into my life, how to, I just didn't have any place to put it. So while pondering all of this, actually within the first 24 hours of being home, one of the people that had been on the spiritual tour with me at the beginning of my time in Peru ended up getting stranded in Toronto. And he had also gone for an ayahuasca retreat, just not the same retreat center as me. And so he called me and he's like, Sinead, I'm stuck in Toronto. I was supposed to go to India. I don't have the right papers. I need a few days to sort this out. They just stuck me in Toronto. I don't know what to do. Can you give me advice? And I said, well, you're going to come here, obviously. I'm not going to let you just go fend for yourself, right? So he came to stay with me, and we spent a long time talking about our experiences and integrating them together and just trying to make sense of them. And he was a very intelligent person, had done a lot of reading on plant medicine, and was able to give me all kinds of helpful information. So that was really nice. But on the fourth day, we decided to go for a walk downtown. I just wanted to show him a little bit of Toronto. And we've been in this bubble of processing Peru and processing our experiences. And so we went for a walk, and this guy was totally uninterested. He was still very much in the zone of his experience, right? So he was completely uninterested with what we were doing. So we basically just said, you know what, we don't really want to be doing this. We're going to go hang out in a park, but we need to eat something. So, what should we do for food? And we're just ambling along this city street looking for like a pizza restaurant. And this guy, I see walking way ahead of us towards us on the sidewalk on the same side of the street, walking towards us. Older gentleman, snowy white hair and a ponytail, white shirt on. He just really stood out to me. And this is like many, many, many feet away, walking towards us. He really stood out to me. And so I just kind of noted him. And then right after I did that, just before I did that, we said, my friend and I said, let's just go to this restaurant up here. And we pointed to it. So we were walking towards the restaurant. This guy is walking down the street towards us. And right after I noticed him and he had stood out to me, he turned and went into the restaurant that we had just said we were going to go into. So we walk in after him. He's in the lineup right ahead of me. He has this really beautiful kind of woven bag. And I just feel like I have to talk to this man. I just have this really strong sense that I have to talk to this man for absolutely no reason whatsoever. So I say, hey, I really like your bag. And he's like, oh, thanks so much. I got it from Turkey. I was just in Turkey. And then he turns around and he's wearing, there's this necklace that people get when they've had an ayahuasca trip in South America or Peru. It's a piece of the ayahuasca vine, often with a stone attached to it. They sell them everywhere in Peru. And he was wearing one of those. And I mean, I had just gotten back from having taken ayahuasca in Peru 4 days earlier, and this guy is wearing part of the ayahuasca vine in front of me in a lineup at a restaurant in Toronto. It really did hit me. So I said, oh, hey, your necklace is really cool. And he looks at me and he goes, have you met ayahuasca? He says it like that. Have you met ayahuasca? And I was like, yes, actually, I just met her just recently. I just got back from Peru. And he kind of looks at me. And then he says, my wife and I were going to go to Peru, but we decided to go to Turkey instead. And that's when I just got this bag. This bag is brand new to me. And it was the bag I had commented on, like, to make the connection with him. So he's just sort of looking at me with this funny expression on his face. And then he says, why don't you come and meet me outside and we can chat? And I thought, this is really interesting. So I just get my coffee or pizza or whatever it is, and I go out and chat with him. And it turns out he is the ex-husband of a teacher that I had met just before going to Peru, who had told me that there was an ayahuasca retreat center in Ontario, because I'm Canadian, I live in Toronto, so Ontario is my province. And she was a colleague of mine, and she had just told me, because I said I'm going to Peru, and I had told her that I was going for an ayahuasca retreat because she's very spiritual. So I shared it with her, and she said, there's this ayahuasca retreat center in Ontario. And she told me all about it and about this guy who always went, and it was her ex-husband, and this was his name, and all of that. And so here I am now, having gone to Peru, and it's 4 days after I've returned from Toronto, and I'm talking to this guy in line, and then I go out to the back of the restaurant and sit and talk with him about ayahuasca. Well, he's my colleague's ex-husband, the exact same guy she had told me about, who ended up giving me information for how I could go and take more ayahuasca, or meet her again, as he would phrase it, at a retreat center in Ontario. It just seemed too weird.
Wow.
So that was
just
a
like
series
full circle.
Yes, exactly. Full circle, synchronous. So, yeah, that was interesting. And then a whole bunch of other things like that happened over the next 2 years. Yeah.
And did you have this feeling, like, were you trying to meet those beings again that you met?
I didn't know I had met beings. I thought that I had created the whole thing. Right?
Okay.
I did not know what to make of it. I did not know how to make any sense of it. I didn't know where to put it in my life. Still not in ufology by this point. Like, as far as I was concerned, I had just been to Peru and had this life-changing 3-week-long experience where all kinds of extraordinary things happened. But I was still very much in this state of mind of, well, is any of this really real? Isn't this supposed to be nonsense? Is this my imagination? Did I make this up? I really didn't know where to put it. Meanwhile, my life just kept on trucking. I had to go to work. I had bills to pay. I had 3D stuff to do, right? So I was distracted by that as well. But then in 2019, almost exactly 2 years later, I watched the Bob Lazar and Area 51 documentary, and immediately after that, 3 light beings showed up in my living room. That's really how it started. I was conscious, not on
Wait, hold on. Sorry. Hold on. One sec. Whoa. So if you weren't into ufology, how did you end up watching the Babazar film? Like, what led you there?
That's a great question. So in 2017 is when I was in Peru, right, in the summer, July to August. So almost exactly 2 years later, in the summer of 2019, it's at the end of June, and because I'm deaf and I have 2 cochlear implants, I had just had my second cochlear implant surgery. So I was recovering from it. And when they give you cochlear implant surgery, it's really intensive. Like, they have to cut your head open, they go into your middle ear, your inner ear, they put the implant in there, and then you have to heal, and you have staples on your head, and, et cetera, et cetera. So for about 2 weeks after the surgery, you're dizzy, or I was dizzy anyway. This was my pattern. I would be dizzy 24/7 for 2 weeks afterwards. So I couldn't go for a walk, right, because I could fall over and hurt myself. I couldn't read because I was too dizzy. I had people visit me, but, most people were working and they had their lives, right? So mostly I'm lying around being an invalid and watching movies and, like, eating soup, So 2 weeks after this, I was incredibly bored. I'd been watching way too many movies, and I just needed to see something completely different. So I practically yelled out loud, like, I'm so bored right now. I need to watch something totally, totally, totally different. What am I going to, I have to find something. I don't know. I just wanted something that was completely alien, funny word to use, great question. I still have not fully integrated my experience. Are you kidding? It keeps going. It's like an endless mystery. I've done more work on it, but I have not fully integrated it. But in any case, I love
and
that.
And hello, Arcturus Pixie is a friend of mine, so good to see you.
So
yeah, these things don't, it's not easy to integrate. That's true. And it can be an ongoing process for your whole life sometimes, I think. So yeah,
it's
a
an
good
ongoing
question,
process. Yeah, it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely feel like all I can really do is speak from my experience. I can't say this is a fact, or this is definitely the case, or these beings are this. I feel like I can only speak from what has occurred to me, and that's it. And I'm exploring like everyone else. There are no answers, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with there not being immediate answers anyway. I'm okay with the journey and the mystery. I think that's a big part of the joy and the excitement of everything that we're doing in this field, right? Is the not knowing. Because when you're in that space of not knowing, all possibilities are there. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that's an extreme sign of maturity in this space, because a lot of people have a hard time getting to that point of being comfortable with the not knowing. And I think it's really important to hold a lot of this at arm's length while still taking it seriously, because the room for error in our discernment, the deceptive nature of the phenomenon, the deceptive nature of our constructs and our environments that help shape our views of reality and our perception. There's a lot going on. It's very complex, and it's really, really important to have that approach that you do. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I just felt like if I tried to define it, in the past I have, in the past I've made the mistake, I think, of saying, not anything drastic or really super blanket statement-y about it, because I do realize that it's not, you can't make a blanket statement. Everybody has such individual experiences. There are some commonalities, but overarchingly, it's very individual, right? But I would say that it's important to be sort of nebulous with it, to be able to continue to investigate and to continue to be curious and to grow in our awareness of what's happening in this time on Earth, as well as what's happening within ourselves. And if we start saying we know the answer, or feeling like we know the answer to anything, that growth is impaired, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. By the way, apologies to the audience. I know there's some blurry issues with Sinead's video. It's probably just a Wi-Fi issue on our end, but hopefully that gets resolved. So sorry, Sinead, we interrupted you at the Babazar story.
Sure, yeah, no problem. I think we're just going to naturally jump around a little bit, right? It kind of happens like that. So I was recovering from cochlear implant surgery. This is in 2019 in the summer. And I was super bored, and I wanted to see something completely different than the usual kinds of movies I had been watching for 2 weeks. And so I just kind of searched around on Netflix, and I found Jeremy Corbell's film, Babazar in Area 51. So I remember thinking, oh yeah, Area 51. Like, remember, I'm not in any of this ufology, any of it, anomalous stuff, nothing. I cannot emphasize that enough. I was living a totally so-called normal life, right? Having had the Peru experience, but no idea what to do with it, where to put it, anything like that. And so I'm like, oh yeah, Area 51. I think, that that place is supposed to be kind of interesting, And so I put on this film, and it blew my mind. Like, I really ended up having a very strong response to it. Very emotional, very energetic. My whole system was like lit up. My brain was lit up. I felt like all my cells were awake. Like, this man is telling the truth. This is real. This really happened. I believed him. I just believed him. I felt like he was very authentic. And that was the beginning of it. I mean, I remember watching it, sitting straight up with my mouth open, just, astonished, and all the hairs on my arms standing up. It was really like that. I was having a major response to this film. And then I crawled across the floor. Oh, sorry, Anthony, what was that?
Sorry, was it Babazar specifically that elicited this reaction, or the actual content of what he was talking about?
Both.
The nature of it?
Okay. Both, yeah.
Because I know in this field, of course, people have issues with Babazar, but I don't think anyone can dispute that the stuff that he's talked about has been coming more and more into the field from legitimate circles in the last few years, especially with the David Grush revelations. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's the way these things work. Sometimes it could just be the information or whatever is the energy behind whatever you're viewing or seeing that could cause this.
Yeah, It does seem like his experience back in the 80s when he came out in public, well, sort of public. At first, his face was in shadow, then he revealed his identity. It does seem like it may have been orchestrated beyond his understanding of it being orchestrated. Yeah, it's definitely very convoluted, and all I know is that this was just my natural, organic reaction, was that I really believed him, and I felt like he was coming from a place of authenticity, and that he wanted people to know. He felt that it was important for the public to know, and that he was highly intelligent and was able to speak in depth on the topic and on engineering and all the things he had done, you know. So, and by the way, there's a new film coming out about him called S4, which everyone should look for. It's going to be amazing, apparently. So in any case, he holds a very special place in my heart. He really, really does, because I think he went through a lot, as many people have. It's just that my own personal connection happens to be with Babazar, and he has really... he's special to me. I think he did something very important. So anyway, the film had this major response, or created this major response in me, and then right after
it was happening to you in
over,
real time, right? This physiological response was happening in real time.
Yes, in real time, like as I'm watching the film. Then right after the movie was over, you know, all I can say is that these three beings made of light arrived in my living room and gave me messages, and this, you know, and I mean, I'm not religious. I've never been raised religious. I did not believe in anything like religious experiences, holy experiences. I thought, you know, they were probably people caught up in their religious fervor or their passionate beliefs or whatever it was, and manifesting this, because I did always believe in the power of the mind, right? But yeah, this was just, wow. I mean, I really don't, I still to this day do not actually have sufficient words for it. It was an extraordinary, extraordinary, extraordinary experience. The energy was something I cannot possibly describe. Not to mention the love and the intelligence, the power. It was just extraordinary. And, you know, here they were saying, we're with you. We've always been with you. It's time for you to know. You have a job to do. You're here for a reason. You know, you need to get to work, basically. Like, you've got to start getting going now. And the intensity was very visceral. And I felt like I was getting bonged over the head with the frying pan, like the cosmic frying pan. You know, that's really what it felt like. It was very, I felt like my whole body reverberated with this interaction and this message. Also, the vibration was so extraordinary that it filled me with this vibration. They filled me with this feeling, like my body received all of it. And then I continued feeling that way for 3 months, 24/7 for 3 months.
Whoa.
Yeah, and so people who are listening to this are probably thinking, oh, that sounds like a nervous breakdown or a bipolar episode or a schizophrenic episode or whatever it is. This is often, you know, the kind of thing that's said to experiencers, but I've had myself checked out. Like, I'm skeptical of my own experiences, so I'm pretty thorough in investigating my own experiences the best that I can. I always ask for the objective perspective. I run it by people whose opinions I trust, people who I know might disagree with me, because I think that's important. And so I went to my doctor and I talked to her, and she, you know, evaluated me, and I continued communicating with her about it, and a psychiatrist who I asked to see because I wanted to just ensure that I was really okay. But the biggest thing of all was that 2.5 weeks after I had this extraordinary experience of them arriving in my, yes, I remember the messages. Hi, Kate. Aw, Kate's here. So 2.5 weeks after this experience, I was starting a job. I'll come back to your question, Kate. I promise.
Do you mind if we pause there?
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd like to go back to the actual experience first, and then let you continue.
Okay.
Well, first, if you want to answer Kate's question, and then I had some questions as well.
Okay. So I remember the messages. The thing is, it's not that easy to repeat them because the vast majority of the time, starting during that experience, the information or messages or whatever it is that's being delivered is not in words. It's a vibration or an energy, and the vibration and the energy is the language. It is the information. It's not light language. It's just the vibration is the language, is the information, the energy is it. I don't know how to explain it. I just understand it in a not a 3D conscious way, like the back of me gets it. My higher self does. So the messages were, I mean, it took me a long time to really remember them because I had to go back into the experience and try to remember what had arrived in my system. And it was that, you know, we're with you. We've always been with you. It's time for you to know that we're with you and you have a job to do and you need to, like, you came here for a reason into this lifetime and you need to be sharing the fact that we are real, that all of this is real, that, you know, people really are experiencing these things. You have to talk about it. You have to share that information. And It wasn't like you are the savior or something like that. It wasn't like that. It was more that you have a job, you have responsibility, you signed up for this. Like, let's get going. Like, get on it. You know, don't waste any more time. You've been trying. That was another thing that they had been trying to get through to me, and I just wasn't really getting it. So even though in 2017 I had that big experience in Peru, I still wasn't really getting it because I had taken ayahuasca, so I didn't take it really seriously. And then even all the synchronicities, you know, I was so used to just dismissing them and not taking them seriously because that's what we're taught. We're taught that none of this is real, right? And I had really, that's the message I had known all my life. It was fully integrated into my thinking. But I still did have enough of a nagging feeling that there was something different going on that I think I was able to remain open enough for this to occur. Yet they still needed the Babazar documentary to happen. Like, they still needed me to watch that for my vibration to go up to a point that they could arrive.
That's fascinating. There's so much there because we tend to we try to, generally speaking, like, we as humans try to anthropomorphize these contact experiences and who these beings or others could be so often. And it's pretty clear that, like, the way they communicate with us is this form of symbolism that is not something we're used to. And it's something we've, like, devolved away from understanding, I think, with everything that's been around us in the modern era. And, you know, there's different states of being that can help access that, I think, whether you're, like, in that enchanted state as you are as a child that you mentioned earlier, and then you lost it. Sometimes it does require something like psychedelics to shed that filter in order to see the symbol and actually have, like, the ability to make the connection, to perceive it, whether it's visual or conceptual or emotional or whatever, to then, like, get, oh, something interesting is happening here, and then go from there. Synchronicities, they're all signs and symbols that elicit meaning in that way. It's really like this hidden language that we've forgotten, I think, and it's amazing to hear you talk about it that way.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I totally agree with you 100%, 100%. And a lot of people that I know and respect, like, there's an author named Paul Anthony Wallace. He's Australian. He's a pastor. I've been following him for a few years. He's been investigating the origins of the Bible and the true human origins. And again, this is a man who is a pastor. Like, he was ordained in the Christian Catholic Church. You know, he's been, or maybe Anglican, actually. I'm not actually sure. I can't remember, so I'll have to go back and check. But he's been a pastor in a religious institution for over 30 years. Yet, here he is saying, hang on a second, and writing books about it. You know, our human origins are not what we have been taught. There's so much evidence as to the contrary. And it's really compelling stuff. You know, if somebody does their research really well and they're actually gathering real evidence and facts and displaying them in such a compelling way as Paul does, it's really something else. And yeah, back then we used to know the language of nature. We used to know the language of the spirit. You know, we used to understand symbology, communicate in symbology. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's a sophisticated way of communicating that we can regain. I really believe that.
Yeah, and I'd love to touch on that later on once we get into stuff like psi and telepathy and mindsight.
Sure.
So we'll table that for later.
Okay.
So, oh, I had one more question regarding your experience there. Like, what you said, they just appeared. These light beings appeared in the room suddenly. Did they just like? Do you remember how it happened? Like, did they phase in? Was there any sounds or any feelings when they had first arrived? Anything like that?
It was the vibration. Like, it was the immediate sensation of a gigantic, unfathomable, powerful intelligence and love with personality that had arrived in my living room. Like, it was just as if someone, I don't know, like some incredibly charismatic, super famous celebrity just like walked into your house. That's not even close to the effect. Actually, that's a really lame example. I don't know. It was really remarkable. Like, really, there are no words. I don't have sufficient words.
Hmm.
It was just
Okay.
something else. Yeah, it was the vibration.
And what? Wow. Yeah, yeah. And what were you like when they started communicating? Was there anything that happened to you physically besides the vibrations? Like, was it if someone was watching you and from the outside, what would they have seen happening in your house or your living room that day?
Nothing. Yeah, nothing. I
Nothing.
mean, yeah, I remember after they left, and they just kind of left, like they were just gone. It wasn't like I saw them and then I didn't see them, or I saw them leaving. It was just they were there and then they weren't. Like the vibration and the sense of presence and personality and intelligence just left the same way you would feel if someone left your home or left your room. You'd feel that human intelligence leaving the room. So
Mm.
very similar. Yeah, and I remember thinking right afterwards, I remember looking around. I was on the carpet. I was sitting on the carpet, and I remember just looking around, kind of reassociating myself with the texture of the carpet and like reassociating myself with the chair and kind of going, what just happened? I don't think I could even think. I think I was still in such a receptive feeling state, not emotion, but feeling. I was in a very nonverbal state with it all. I just remember needing to be sensory, like needing to touch the carpet and sort of like touch my own legs to make sure I was really still there. It was a funny experience. It felt
Wow.
surreal.
So
Yeah.
did it feel like you like physically or maybe psychically or physically, if it matters, like did you feel like you went somewhere else and that's why you had to reassociate? Or was another
No,
realm like
I don't feel like I went
surrounding
somewhere
you?
else. No. No, it felt distinctly like they had come into my realm, and that was part of why it had felt so huge. Because the
Mm.
distinction of energy was so incredibly contrasting and clear. Yeah.
Wow.
But I know also
Wow.
that if I hadn't watched the Babazar documentary first and had that reaction and gotten like my vibration up, as they say,
Hmm.
I don't think that they would have been able to meet me in that space in quite the same way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yep. I mean, some experiences I've had doing stuff like CE5,
Oh yeah.
and it's not like the Greer technique, but I kind of take some from him and some from other origins. But yeah, I've had experiences where I've literally said like I start seeing some things in the sky and they're very faint and fleeting, and I put out this message one time like I I think I said I'll come higher if you can try to go lower. Yeah, that's what I said. I was in Italy last summer, and I was lying on a beach doing this, and I was seeing what looked like faint, very faint, high up shooting stars. And as soon as I said that, I was looking like in the same area where I had just seen what appeared to be a shooting star or a meteor. I put out this message, and I actually got out my phone and had it ready. Like something told me like take out your phone, and I see this orb of light like appear exactly where I'm looking out of nowhere, and just slowly track across the Big Dipper over like 30 seconds with no trail, just slow in a straight line. And it like flared up a bit and then it flared back down, kept tracking. I got it on my time lapse camera, and it looks just like a line going across the Big Dipper. And then it faded out and disappeared. And it was just after I put out that message, like, I'll try to come higher if you come lower. Oh, and I also, when I said that, I listened to these like certain frequency sounds and music, and I raised the frequency to a higher frequency when I said that. I was like, let me try to get higher that way. And that's that's why I had my phone out. That's right. I took out my phone to change the frequency. That's what it was on the sound that I was listening to. And that's when that happened. So I know
Wow.
exactly what you mean.
That is amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is definitely a partnership, or at least I feel like it is. You know, we have to do our part, otherwise they don't. It's almost like inviting someone into your home, you know, unless you open the door and say, "Here I am, you're welcome to come in." They can't come in. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
how it
Okay.
feels.
Sorry. So we interrupted you. So after that experience, like what started happening for you?
Then I was fully in the whole thing. Like I was absolutely fully in. I mean, it was largely because 2.5 weeks after that, I started a job, and the job. So I'm an educator, and you can, as an educator, you can do this extra work. You know, you can teach summer school, you can do tutoring, you can do whatever. And so this job was scoring government literacy tests. So again, I'm in Canada. And there are these government literacy tests that are mandated by the government, the federal government, for all the provinces of Canada, and they're sent out to all these kids, right? So you have to be in grade 6 or grade 10 to have this particular assessment done. And I was marking or scoring the booklets from kids in grade 6, so kids who were 10 and 11 years old. And I had to mark exactly, or we all in my room, like in the sectioned off room that I was in. It was this gigantic warehouse. There's like hundreds of teachers coming in every morning at 7 o'clock, you know, all tired with our massive coffees, and it was very kind of low vibe, you know. So the fact that I had just been in this other place vibrationally and in terms of reality, like my whole life had changed overnight because of what had happened. Every single thing in my life immediately became different. Like literally, it was that profound of an experience to me because I knew it was real. I just knew. I knew this had happened, right? So it changed absolutely everything for me, everything. And so 2.5 weeks later, here I am going into
Can you
this.
give an example? Sorry, can you give an example? Like what do you mean? What was one thing that
I
changed?
couldn't see myself the same way. I couldn't see living the same way. I couldn't, I finally understood why I'd had all the questions that I had had about human nature and why so many things about how we interacted with each other in the world made no actual practical sense to me. They were hurtful to us. They were hurtful to others. They were hurtful to animals, hurtful to the environment. You know, like how are we not shooting ourselves in the foot by doing all of these things, by polluting the world, by starting wars? I mean, isn't this detrimental
Mm,
to us, like to ourselves to do this? Why are we doing this? You know, it just seemed like it really didn't make any sense. And the beings came with this, I don't know. I mean, there was a whole bunch of other information that was transmuted through that energy that is much, much broader than just the messages. It came with this peek into like a state of universal being, you know, like I felt like they
mhm.
were from the universe. They understood the universe And here I was living this little life as this human being on Earth. So when they finally arrived and confirmed for me that there's something different about this life that I am supposed to know, you know, that there is more, it was just incredibly validating and confirming and clarifying and earth-shattering and what I had always wanted and needed and waited to hear, really, you know. And then that was just the very beginning of it, though. So I went full time. I just was down the rabbit hole, like immediately after that, full face first, you know, what do they call it? Belly flopping in there. I mean, I could not think about anything else. I was just compelled to try to find out what this was. And I knew it had to do with UFOs and extraterrestrials because I had had the experience in Peru, and then I had watched the Babazar documentary. So it just seemed to me that that's what it was about at the time. Now I know it's bigger than just that. But
and this was 2019, you said?
2019, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, so then I'm down the rabbit hole like a maniac, you know, for 2.5 weeks, just living, breathing, and completely wrapped up in all of this stuff, trying to find out what had happened, making some connections. But meanwhile, I recovered from my surgery. I signed up to do this job. So, you know, 2.5 weeks after the Babazar beings in my living room incident, I am going into this warehouse with this super low vibe with like exhausted people who are there to pay their bills. You know, the contrast was so stark that by Wednesday, I was worried about myself because I thought there must be something wrong with me, not the environment, because I was thinking, but this is reality. So then what was that? Like, if this is reality and this is what we all do in normal life, then how? I don't you know, I was very stressed about it. So, so here's when it gets super, super fun. So Monday, again, I'm marking this one question in every single booklet, right? Every single booklet that I pick up randomly from the front of the room. We're not assigned certain booklets. You just go up to the front of the room that you're in. There's a massive, massive bookshelf or shelf, and you just go up and grab whatever stack of booklets, and then you're going to score them. It's totally random, right? Mm-hmm. But you're always marking or scoring page 12. And page 12, it wasn't actually page 12. I'm making this up, but let's just say page 12. There's one page. And you're supposed to score this question. So the kids, it's creative writing, right? So there's a prompt, and the prompt is write about the day you became famous. That's it. Just write about the day you became famous. So on Monday, the kids are like, oh, I became famous because I did a collab with Eminem. And, you know, we made this cool ass video and everybody thought it was amazing. And now I'm just the coolest person ever. And, you know, now I'm famous, right? Or I did a makeup tutorial, or I, whatever it is that kids think about when they're 10 and 11 years old. You know, I made a skateboard and I put a rocket on it. It was amazing. You know, that's what I was reading. So they write 2 pages of this, and then they get a score on their literacy level. And every single day we're supposed to score hundreds and hundreds of these booklets. We have a quota, right? So Monday, it's all this stuff. Tuesday, it's all the same stuff. Eminem, Taylor Swift. I did a collab with it. I did a Kardashian thing. I did this. I did whatever, right? It's just really cute 10 and 11-year-old kid stuff. By Wednesday night, I'm seriously worried about myself. I feel like, no, this is reality, so that can't be reality. So there must be something wrong with me. And so, but no, this is me talking to myself, right? No, that really did happen. Like, I know that happened. And I had been collecting information for the past 2.5 weeks down the rabbit hole that had helped me and had told me that there were other experiencers out there and that things like this did happen, right? All the same, I'm really kind of nervous and scared. I don't have anywhere to put this in my life. I don't know anybody I can talk to, et cetera, right? So I go home, and I was really upset, and I kneeled down on the floor of my living room. And again, I did not grow up religious, but I basically prayed. That's pretty much what happened. It just beamed out from my heart. And I said, I need you to prove it to me. I know you're here. I know you're with me. I know you can hear me. I need you to prove it to me that this is real, that you were really here, that all of this really happened.
Oh, sorry, we lost Sinead. Oh, sorry, Sinead, we lost you for like 5 seconds. So you said
I'm so sorry.
that's fine. You said you're praying and you wanted to know if this really happened.
Yeah, I really did. I was demanding proof. I was saying, I need you to really give me solid, undeniable proof. Undeniable.
And
Something that
can I
is
ask you,
so undeniable. You know what I mean? It's undeniable because I can't deny it. It's just like, it's got to be impermeable. And
can I
so,
ask you something about that?
yeah, go for it.
So you said you were praying and you said, like, I know you were here. So who were you praying to? Did you have an idea or an intention for who you were praying to? And did you see a connection between, like, what we would call God or source or the universe and these beings in that way?
I was praying to the beings that showed up in my living room. That's all I was thinking about.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about anything, like, in this field. I knew nothing. And I just was asking for help because I was lost in terms of understanding this. And the impact on my life had been so deep and profound and irreversibly, my paradigm broke overnight, as they say. My paradigm shifted. So that my life
that's why
was
they call it. That's why they call it
yeah.
ontological shock. I mean, like John Mack used that term, and now it's being used more often. And that's why, like, I think that it's so hard in the modern, like, Western world to talk about things like mental health in relation to experiences and the nature of reality, because really it does seem like to get yourself to a point to where you can overcome the ontological shock enough to integrate what happened with you so that it's not something completely fake. You have to actually learn to detach from certain assumptions we have about reality and, like, create enough of a wider reality that makes room for these phenomena. And I mean, if you go deep enough, like, and you talk to like a mainstream skeptical reductionist psychotherapist, maybe they're just going to tell you, you're schizophrenic or you're going through some sort of manic episode or something like that. But that's not the case. Like, these things you actually have to you have to harden yourself with a new understanding of reality in order to feel at ease and to feel the balance again after what you've experienced. So thank you for talking about that.
Thank you for asking. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a weird thing. I mean, I'm used to it now, but it's been 7 years, right? And it's been almost 10 years since Peru, because that was in 2017. So I have done a lot of integration, a lot of learning, a lot of, working on just like deep spiritual work on myself, work on my conscious evolution. All these things help to not make sense of it necessarily, but I think to be able to receive it, accept it, work with it, get to know it a little better. It being the intelligence, the phenomena, like all the different ways that it shows up, because it shows up in such a wide variety of ways. It's not just all about UFOs and ETs. I'm not even sure that, I mean, I feel like there are probably innumerable species of ETs out there with all kinds of different personalities and motivations. And I think that saying, ETs are this, like they're big bad ETs that are coming, they're controlling our world and they're sucking our souls and using us for energy, maybe. But then there's the people that say, oh, no, they're all love and light. I mean, all my experiences have been positive, but I know they're not all love and light. I know that that's unrealistic as well, right? You can't say they're all this way, they're all that way, or UFOs are this.
Yeah.
UFOs are even UFOs show up in, or UAP, in such an incredibly diverse array of ways and shapes and forms and textures
Yep.
and colors and, materials and not materials. It's not understandable. It's just observable, and we have to be receptive and be patient. And I think just keep learning, right? Really keep learning. Be open
Yeah.
to all the things that are happening and how they're happening. And of course, discernment is important too, but that's murky water as well, right? Because then what are we using for discernment? How do we discern?
Exactly.
It's really just opinion and judgment. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So what happened after you asked them to, or prayed to them to show up or to show you a sign? Sorry.
Right. So, as I was saying, you just go up to the front. We had a quota every day of like 400 or 500 booklets, whatever it was. You get the morning spiel from the guy who, or the woman who leads your room. Hey, good morning, everybody. This is our quota for the day. This is what we're going to be doing. You need to score 550 booklets by the end of the day, whatever it is. Good luck, right? And then they get off the microphone, and then we all go up to the front of the room, grab a random stack of booklets, come back, and score them. So, as I said, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it was just the usual. I did a collab with Eminem. I did a collab with Taylor Swift. Super cute little kid stuff. 10 and 11-year-old kids, with the occasional exceptional one, but still nothing about what we're talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
I go home on Wednesday night. I pray from my heart. I demand or ask vehemently for undeniable proof. And then I fall asleep on the carpet, which I don't even really remember doing, and I never do that. I wake up with carpet face. And I remember waking up with carpet face and going, oh my God, and, having to scrub it out before I could go to work. And then going to work and just hoping and hoping and hoping that they would answer me. And getting to work, getting the spiel, going up to the front of the room, grabbing a random stack of booklets, and lo and behold, that morning, and only that morning, for 45 minutes, and only for 45 minutes because that's when I ran to the bathroom to text my friends, every single booklet in children's handwriting, in pencil, in 10 and 11-year-old kids' handwriting. The booklet contents were completely different. It was all about the Earth is alive. The Earth is conscious. There's an intergalactic council. There's a portal in my bedroom. I invented time travel. ETs come and visit me. I can fly. Everybody can fly. I mean, it was just on and on and on and on and on. These
Wow.
booklets, every single one of them was talking about this stuff. What does that have to do with the prompt, which was the day I became famous?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Nothing.
Right? So I'm just
Wow.
looking at these going, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I could
How many
not
do you
believe
think you
it.
went through? How many booklets?
Penny?
How many booklets do you
I'm
think
sorry.
you went through?
Oh, how many booklets? Oh God, it was for 45 minutes, so probably like 20, 25, 30.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's insane.
I know. So then I ran to the bathroom. Like I couldn't take it anymore. I was so delighted. I just couldn't believe it. Ran to the bathroom to text in private my friends so I wouldn't be seen by anybody, like any supervisors in the hallway, texting my friends. So texted them and was just the new friends that I had in the community and just said, look, I just have to tell somebody this just happened. What can you tell me? And they were amazed and said, yeah, this is the kind of stuff that can happen. So then I go back to the room, and right away, for the remainder of the day, the booklets are all back to normal. And for the remaining 2 weeks, they're all back to normal. It was only that
Wow.
45 minutes after I had asked for solid proof. They changed my reality in front of
Yeah.
me. I mean, that's
Yeah.
basically what happened. Yeah. So, I mean, because of that experience, which I can't prove, right? I can't prove it. I mean, they were government booklets, so I wasn't allowed to take them home, and I couldn't take any photographs of them. And if I did, I would have been fired, and I could have even been severely, punished in some way. I don't know how, maybe with some kind of a fine. I don't know. But, they took it very seriously, right? So I can't prove it, but that's so common with the phenomena that it shows up in ways where it's kind of like, ha ha ha, this is
Yeah.
just for you. You're not going to be able to prove this or show this to anybody else.
Yeah. Right.
Yet it's, you know, yeah.
So looking back on that now, with what you know and where you've come, do you think that you said you saw it as a sign that they came in and changed your reality.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any chance that you, or like the notion of you, somehow played a role in doing that by having that like strong intention to have this to have a sign? Or do you see that
Well, I think it's,
connected to these others? Do you know what I mean? Like your intentionality?
yeah, yeah. In my experience, just from what I know and have experienced, my understanding is that it's a partnership. So if you don't give them a doorway, they don't come in.
Hmm.
You have to, I mean, there are people that have said, oh, they just showed up in my life and did this to me, or this happened and I didn't ask for any of it. That happened to me too, right? I did not ask for any of this. They showed up in my life, right? So at the same time, I think there's something to the idea of, we make an agreement in that space we exist in before we come into this life, or before we come into any lifetime. That theory that we're in this sort of limbo, we're with our team, the team that is invisible, that is around every human being, apparently, that helps us with our lifetimes, apparently, right? That is my experience. My experience is that there are beings around me that I can communicate with. I can ask them for things. They will literally make physical things occur in my life. Ridiculous synchronicities. They will answer things I ask them. How is that happening? I mean, obviously there's something or someone that is listening, that is intelligent and can respond. But I think that it's the asking and the receptivity and the willingness that gives them the ability to meet us in that space. And then it's cooperative and it's relationship. And it's like any other relationship. Like, you have to put time and effort into it. You have to reach out. You have to call them sometimes. They call you sometimes. You know what I mean? It really does work like that. Like,
Yeah.
it's to me, that's my experience of it. The more I nurture the relationship, the deeper and more pervasive in my so-called real life it becomes. Yeah.
Wow. Now there's another example you've told me about when this happened in a similar way, right? When you asked for something. Do you mind sharing that one?
Does it have to do with this guy behind me?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I put him there on purpose. So this man behind me, the warrior over my right shoulder, is it's a photograph. It's a very old photograph from the late 1800s by an incredible photographer. This is actually a book of photography. And I found this book when I was walking down the street that I live on one day. Somebody had just put stuff out on a lawn, and I saw this book, and the picture was immediately compelling, just jumped out at me and grabbed me. So I picked up the book, and I brought it home, and for 4 years, I didn't open it. This is not conscious or deliberate. I just never opened it. I always had him propped up. I call it him. It's not even a book. It's like he's a person. I always had him propped up somewhere. I'm an art lover. I've got tons of art books. I could always put them away into my library, no problem. Put them stacked up on my shelves. But whenever I would go to put this one away, I couldn't do it. It felt like it was a person, and I'd be putting a person into the shelf. That's just the feeling I had. So he was always propped up, right? So anyway, this one day I was walking around at home. This happened last year. I was walking around at home and just doing stuff, doing dishes and putting things away and, this and that. But every time I walked past the book, his picture, I felt distinctly as if someone had just called my name, and I would sort of startle and turn as if there was somebody there that just called me. So I'm not thinking about the book. I'm not paying any attention to it. I'm in my head about the dishes and the laundry and all these other things, right? Yet several times I had this being startled feeling, being called, like my name was being called, and then turning around and seeing that it was coming from the book. But there was no actual voice. It was just this feeling, right? So that happened so many times over the course of a few hours that I eventually started to clue in, and I realized, oh, okay, something's going on. So then I started talking to the picture as if he was there and just said, okay, I hear you. Like, I know you're reaching out. This is what will happen with the phenomenon, right? And so I just will notice something is happening, and then I just say, okay, I hear you. Okay, I got it. Is there more, or what, what do I need to know?
Mm-hmm.
And then more comes. So that's what happened. So I pick him up, I look at him, and I just brought him over to my table where I was getting some work done, working away on my laptop. And he's propped up beside me, and it was distinctly like there was a person sitting there. It really felt like he was alive, especially that day. And he was sitting right beside me as a human being next to me as I was working. It was a really, really strong sensation. So at one point, I looked over, and this just popped out of my mouth. I did not think of this. It just came out of my mouth. I asked him, "Are you here with me? Are you here?" And then I kind of laughed because I had just asked a book this question. And so I kind of laughed.
Yeah.
And I just went back to but I'm paying attention to what's happening. Like, I know something's happening. I just don't know what it is, right? And I'm just waiting. So I get my work done for about another hour, and wanted to take a break by that point. So I went to sit down and have a sandwich and watch something while I was eating, right? So I started to rewatch The X-Files a few weeks previously. And it had been, like I said, several weeks since I'd seen an episode. I couldn't even remember where I was at with the show. So I just basically turned my laptop on and just started playing The X-Files, not knowing which episode was coming. So within 10 minutes of the show, Fox Mulder, and I have photographs of this, Fox Mulder walks up to this photograph. He walks into the office of this character and walks right up in one smooth motion, walks into the office, right up to the wall of this character's office, and looks directly at this photograph.
Wow.
And I just thought, okay, well, that's the answer to my question. I mean, come on. Like, what are the chances?
What is the probability of that happening?
What is the probability? It's ridiculous. Not to mention The X-Files. I mean, come on. Like, the phenomenon really, in my experience, does have a sense of humor. It likes to be playful. It likes to kind of say, yeah, I am here, he, and this is how I'm going to show up in The X-Files. Not to mention that I did my homework because, as I said, I like to be a little bit discerning of even my own experiences, right? So I thought, okay, I'm just going to go and look up this episode. So of all the 17 seasons of The X-Files, this is the only episode that was about South American shamanism and was about a female shaman who had come back as a Black Panther. And I've had Black Panther show up repeatedly in my life, including when I was in Peru for the first time, although I didn't get it at the time. So it was just, I had just asked him, "Are you here?" 10 minutes later, Fox Mulder's looking at him, and then it relates directly to my Peru experience. It was just so funny. So yeah, that's often how it will show up.
Yeah, it's not just the improbability of like it being in the X-Files, it's the timing. Like that plus the timing of it happening
Yeah.
in that way right after you asked it. Yeah, it's just wild. Wow.
Yeah.
Can you expand on the Black Jaguar experience you had back in Peru? And we're going to jump back a bit.
Sure. So I had this experience of before, like the night before I left for Peru, of having this hand come over my hand and make me pack, like help me pack what I was packing for the trip. And that was a very interesting experience because I was both aware of it and not aware of it. Like, I was aware that there was something going on and it felt like there was this hand over my hand, but I was also not really aware of it. And I just kind of kept on doing what I needed to do as if there wasn't something weird going on. So that was an interesting experience, especially to reflect upon and go, why didn't I stop and go, oh, wow, something strange is going on? I didn't even do that. Anyway, so flew to Peru, arrive in Peru, have crazy altitude sickness for 3 days, three days. On the third day, I go up to the rooftop of the hotel, and I was just sitting there feeling the vibe, really, like feeling, amazing. I felt very resonant as soon as I got to Peru, and I had been extremely depressed right before that. So I'm just enjoying this feeling, and I'm looking out into the night sky, and I'm on the roof. It's looking down over the bowl of Cusco. Cusco is the ancient city of the Incas, the capital city of the Inca. And so I'm looking down over the bowl of Cusco, and way, way, way across from me are the Andes Mountains. They're all around me, but I can see them way, way off in the distance. It's also nighttime, so night has settled in, darkness has settled in, and there are these little tiny twinkling lights that end up showing up way across from me on the mountains of like the roadways and people's homes, little tiny lights. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there looking at this, and all those lights that were on the mountain went up into the sky and made the completely clear, detailed, perfect face of a black jaguar or a jaguar. But I say a black jaguar because the background was the black night sky. And I mean, whiskers, nose, eyes, incredible eyes, the ears, the head, everything. So I
Wow.
just sat there in shock and then did that thing where I looked away, looked back, no, it was still there, pinched myself, slapped myself, looked around to see if anybody else was there that could verify it. Nobody was. I was alone, of course, because that's what the phenomena does. Um, and after about 30 minutes, I timed it. I had my phone with me. The lights just dissipated and went back to how they had
30
been on.
minutes. That's a long time.
I know.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's another thing, right? Like, if it was just a quick flash of a vision, then I could doubt it. But the fact that I was sitting there with nothing else distracting me, it happened directly in my line of sight, in the clear night sky, so incredibly detailed. And then the meaning was ridiculous. And I went down to my hotel room afterwards and I Googled it, Black Jaguar, Peru, and the significance was just incredible. It was incredible. It blew my mind. There were so many synchronicities with that trip. It would take forever to talk about them, but that was a very powerful one. And then I've had all kinds of things happen with Black Panther. Like this one day I was driving up to a spiritual retreat. I was actually about to do a horse medicine retreat, and I was not into horses. This is another thing that spirit basically made me do. So I went to this horse medicine retreat, and on the way to the horse medicine retreat, I asked whoever, whatever, spirit, NHI, source, I don't know, there's so many words. I asked them, are you with me right now? Like, did you really send me to this retreat? And I'm at a red light when I ask this question. I'm just waiting for the red light to turn. And right beside me, there's an empty lane of traffic, and a huge 18-wheeler truck pulls up beside me, and the entirety of the side of the truck is covered in a Black Panther.
Wow.
Right? Or I'll
Yeah.
be holding my animal medicine cards or my tarot cards, and one would fall out, and it would be Black Panther. It just happened over and over and over again. So, yeah. But that
Wow.
one in Peru, that was crazy. Like 30 minutes of sitting there just staring at it in shock. So delighted and overjoyed that I'm seeing this because I know it's a message and I know it's communication. But this was right at the very beginning of my trip, my journey of discovering myself and ending up here. I really didn't know what to do with it, but I knew it had happened.
Hmm.
And then yet again, after all these experiences in Peru, going back home to Toronto, it was just such a thud back into the 3D. I would start going, did I really see that? Did that really happen? You're
Yeah.
really, it's difficult. It's such a clashing ex- experience. It's just so the yin
It's
yang.
that
That's what it
it's
feels
that
like.
like Maya that we were talking about the other day, right? It's this like forgetfulness that we do, and it's like we do it all the time,
Yep.
where we lose that magic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Um, Thank you for sharing all that. Uh, did you ever encounter those light beings again since that time?
Yes. Yeah. So there's been three times. So again, three, right? And each time was almost exactly 2 years apart, which is weird. Every time was in the summer, around the beginning, sometime in July, basically, when these things would occur. So, okay, I went off on a tangent in my mind. Can you ask the question again? I need to be grounded a little bit more.
Sure.
Yeah.
The light beings. When was the? You said you saw them a third time, correct? A few years after.
Thank you. So, okay, so the first time was Peru, the second time was Babazar and the
Mhm.
booklets, and the third time was almost 2 years after that, which was in 2021. So at that point, I'm with Grant Cameron. I'm his research and interview assistant. And we're going to our first ever conference together. We had worked together for 2 years at that point, but we had never traveled together. So he said, hey, I was invited to this event in Illinois. Why don't you come and be my assistant? And it can be a great learning experience for you. And you can meet this person and that person and so on. And so I went. I ended up doing my own little presentation just for a very small group on Sasquatch, which was so much fun. I really love Sasquatch. I think that's a fascinating bit of the phenomena, or part of the phenomena as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, it's 3 or 4 days long. There's all these different talks and events going on. And so we decided to attend this CE5 event. It was a lecture, essentially, about CE5, how it works, how to do it, evidence that's come from it, equipment you use, this kind of stuff. It starts at 2 o'clock and it goes until 4 o'clock. And I'm sitting right beside Grant. We're in this semi-outdoor area. It was a beautiful retreat area associated with a B&B. So we're in this outdoor area where we're covered, like there's a roof over us, but there's no walls, and we're surrounded by garden. So you can see right out into the garden. So right ahead of us is this gigantic evergreen hedge, like huge, really tall, 20 feet tall or 18-foot tall evergreen hedge. And then kind of to my right, at about a 45-degree angle from me, is the stage where the lecturers are. And so they're standing there talking about CE5. It starts at 2 o'clock. Grant is sitting beside me. And at 3 o'clock, at around 3 o'clock, and I know that because there was a clock on the table to help out the presenters, I get this feeling, look over here, and I'm supposed to be looking at this in this 45-degree angle direction to my right, to where the presenters are, which I'm doing, and I'm paying attention, I'm into it, and one of my friends is one of the lecturers, so I want to support her. But at 3 o'clock, I get this feeling, look over here, right? So I turn my head, and I look straight ahead at the hedge, and there's nothing there, it's just a hedge, right? So I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, that was nothing. Turn back, pay attention again to the lecture, and again this feeling, look over here. So I looked over, and basically what happened was this being, I can't say it was a light being exactly, but it does feel like it was associated with them because of what occurred and the energy that was transmitted. So, and also the way it showed up. So I had been asking them to show up physically. Like I'd been saying to them, I think I might be ready to actually meet you. If you think that's okay, I trust your judgment, like come, if you think it's okay. And so I didn't think anything was actually going to happen. I thought, oh, they'll never show up, and plus I wasn't really that attached to it. I just thought the communication and the information was the most important thing. And I didn't really care so much about their bodies and what they looked like and what species they were. So I wasn't super attached to that, but I was still asking just to see if I could progress the relationship. So for about 3 months, I've been asking for them to come. And then in front of me, in front of this evergreen hedge, this very tall, slim being pretty much materialized. It was like this kind of misty, slightly glowy, like mist or fog, as if the being was made of that. And all I could see was the shape, but it was alive. Like it was standing there, arms at its side, wow. Feet firmly on the ground, like planted with this very calm but powerful, confident stance. And then I heard in my head, and I thought it was my own thought, this is an energy merge. And I remember thinking, why did I just think that? Like, I don't actually know. I didn't know what an energy merge was. I don't think I'd even heard of it at that point. And then the being just proceeds to, like, pretty much fire hose me. Like, that's what it felt like. It felt like a fire hose. It was extremely intense. It's intense every single time. A fire hose of energy. And this was this energy merge, right? So it just blasts me with this energy for an hour for the rest of the presentation.
What?
And yeah. And I'm just sitting there, and my body goes numb. I couldn't move my mouth. Like, everything was tingling and buzzing, intensely tingling and buzzing and vibrating, like this sort of vibration and this infusion of energy, and everything around me changed. The air was different. I couldn't really see the room that well. I didn't know where surfaces were. My body felt different. All I could see was the being, and all I could see was this like stream of, I don't know, energy that was coming at me. And then, so that happened for an hour. then after that, my friend came down off the lecture podium, and she had seen me pretty much sitting there just trying to deal with this. I think I was rubbing my thighs and just kind of breathing,
Mm.
because it was so intense. And so she's seen that I was looking at the hedge for for an hour. Right? I'd been sitting there staring at this evergreen hedge for an hour. So she comes over like, "Are you okay?" And I couldn't really communicate what had just happened. So she took me aside, and she's also an experiencer, I found out that day, and helped me integrate it. And I had all these visualizations of how the energy was being absorbed into my body. In particular, this feeling of all of the energy streaming from my extremities into the middle of my chest and whirling around like a vortex and being kind of sucked into my body that way somehow.
Wow.
So this is a strong visualization. And then I had to go and rest for a few hours. I was totally overcome. The being showed up again in my room, but only very briefly from maybe the shoulders up, with this very
Wow.
warm, friendly kind of energy,
When you
but
were
nothing.
like awake or in a like a liminal state or a dream state, it showed up in
I
your
was
room?
awake. I was wide awake. Yeah,
Wow.
I was wide awake. Yeah, but overcome by what had just happened. And then I had a nap, and then I woke up, had to assist Grant with his presentation. This is still the same day. This all happened in the same day. Assisted with Grant with his presentation. I don't know how I did that. I think I was on automatic. I don't remember actually doing it. And then he knew something had happened by that point, so he sat down and interviewed me about it and like took some notes and asked me questions. And then we had to go across the street to the CE5 that was happening right next to a cemetery in a field beside us. I thought the location was pretty cool. So we started walking over to the CE5. We're late by this point, right? Because he had been asking me questions about what happened. And
Wait,
we
wait, sorry.
walked.
So the original CE5 thing, was that just a presentation and not an actual CE5 practice?
It was just a lecture on how CE5 is done.
Wow. And that's when
Yeah,
this happened to you. Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And there were
Wow.
like 50 people sitting behind me, and it's broad daylight, and it was bonkers. So at this point, it's nighttime, and it's after 9 p.m., and we are going across to the CE5, the actual CE5, right?
Yeah.
So the lectures finished earlier in the day. Now we're doing a CE5 at night, led by the same people who did the lecture.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, I'm deaf, right? So I really need to see people to hear them. So in order to hear you, I have to see your mouth, your facial expression, your body language, and also hear your tone of voice. So if it's dark, I can't really hear anybody. You have to be super, super close to me with no background noise, or I have to be able to see your mouth.
Hmm.
So from this point on, all of this is told to me by Grant and other people. I did not hear any of this, okay? So from this point on, the story was told to me, okay? So we're walking towards the CE5 circle. A friend of ours had kept 2 chairs for us. This is Grant and me coming in, right? So we go over to the chairs. He can hear her calling, so just follow him over to the chairs. And as we're getting settled into our chairs, 2 or 3 people in the CE5 circle start exclaiming that a big energy, quote unquote, has just come into the circle. And they're saying, whoa, like, what is this energy? Whoa, whoa. And I'm not hearing this, right? Grant is hearing it. And so he elbows me in the ribs. He thinks I'm hearing it. So he elbows me in the ribs, and he's like, they're picking you up like a radio signal. And I just laughed, like, haha, yeah. Like, I didn't know what he was
He
talking
thought it
about.
was you?
He thought well, they pointed in my direction. Like when the person who was
Ah,
leading the
okay.
circle asked for everybody to identify where the energy was coming from. Again, it's dark. They couldn't see me. They didn't know who was sitting there. It was a very big circle of people where I
Hmm.
think 50 or 60 people were in that
Oh,
circle.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it was pretty big. And so they just pointed in my direction. And I did not know that, right? I'm told this later. So because of that, because everybody's feeling, or well, several people are feeling this energy, and because they're all pointing in the same direction, the guy who's leading the CE5 says, okay, let's take a break. Something's here. Let's take our cameras out and just shoot randomly, and we'll just see what happens if anybody picks something up.
Hmm.
So this woman I never met before took a picture in Grant and my direction. And in the photograph, there is what appears to be, and this is not me making a statement, but it appears to be a tiny little gray standing beside me. And in my chest is this very bright vortex looking light, which doesn't make any sense because I wasn't wearing a necklace or anything reflective. There was no light in the area. I didn't have my phone in my hand. How is that light there? So I've had that photograph analyzed by two people. One is a professional photographer, a friend of mine, who's also a total skeptic. And the other person works at Getty Images, and neither one of them have been able to explain what that little being is, why it would appear that way in the photograph, or what the light is. And there's also other distortions in the picture that don't really make total sense. So it's an interesting photograph, and especially because of the chain of events of what had occurred, right? If it was just a picture by itself, I might think, oh, the light was off, or it's, a weird camera or whatever. But with that whole chain of events, it just was too strange. And then
do you have a copy of that photo still?
I do, yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So for the audience, I'll be doing a post-production on this episode, especially because there's some issues, and I think they'll clear up at that point. And I'll add some of these photos and images from Sinéad's stories. So be sure to check back in and check those out.
I wouldn't mind opinions. I mean, it's an odd photo. It doesn't look clearly. I mean, of course, they never look clearly like an ET. But it's an interesting photograph, and it's one that
the context is important.
The context is very important. The sequence of events, people's reactions, not having any idea what I had experienced earlier that day, people who I didn't know, who didn't know me, you know what I mean? So just a number of things that made it super, super interesting. And then I got home, and 5 days after I got home, I got a message from a psychic that I'd never met before, telling me that she had a message for me and that it felt intergalactic, and she'd never had an intergalactic message come to her before. And then she basically passed on a message that echoed what I had experienced in Illinois with the being in front of the hedge.
Wow.
How do you explain that?
Well, and what was that message again?
Well, it was, I can't remember it exactly. It was written in a kind of run-on sentence kind of way. I can pull it up on my phone. If I have my phone somewhere, I'll try to find it. But I have to scroll way, way, way back. But
don't worry about it. It's okay.
Okay.
Do you know the general gist of it?
Yes. So the gist of it was that they had been with me in Illinois, and they were giving me energy for a reason, and it was all like information. I'm supposed to use it, and don't worry, more is coming. And I know there's more specific stuff that I'm not doing a good job of explaining it right now because I honestly can't remember. But it was specific enough and timely enough and coincidental, so-called enough, that I was kind of like, this is very odd. Why would this psychic who I've never met before, never interacted before, why would she reach out to me? Why would she say that the message is galactic? And why would it echo what I've just experienced? And she doesn't know she doesn't know anything about me, anything about the fact that I'd just been in Illinois or had that experience. Right. So
and you hadn't been public about it at that point, and Grant hadn't posted anything?
Absolutely not, because I was still very overwhelmed. So I was processing it.
Wow, that's amazing. Have you and when was that? How many years ago?
That was 2021. So the first one was 2017, 21 was 2019. 2017, second one was 2019, third one was 2021, all in the summer.
And nothing happened 2 years after that?
No, nothing happened 2 years after that. But again, I have this thing with threes, right? So I think it was 3 on purpose. Yeah.
What do you think happened in that energy merge? Like, do you see something within you or feel something within you since then that has changed?
My psychic abilities increased. My telepathy, which I didn't even know I had, started up. My intuition, my accuracy with intuition and psychic stuff. I just was more tuned in. I was able to become tuned in, or like get into the zone, as they say, much more easily. it became more of a flow in my everyday life. It just became more continuous for me and more distinct. Yeah. And my abilities were flourishing. And then why did they give me the energy merge? I don't totally know. I wasn't given a reason, but I don't know. It feels like, if I really did sign up to be here, if I really chose to be here and I chose this life and I chose to be here at this time and I chose to be human at this time, that all these things are happening on Earth, and that if I really do have a role or a responsibility or a job in all of this, as I think millions of us do, then I would, then I can say that I feel like I'm sort of being helped to get to a point where I can be of assistance in some way with all of this. And I don't know what that is or how, but I'm just waiting.
Yeah, I know other people who have had that experience where they feel like it's something that's passed on to them that will be there for them when they need it, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, there's some very esoteric stuff that I could say, but I'm a little bit reluctant because it's very personal, but also it's not definable. It's just sort of stuff that I think I've been told and that it feels like I've been told. And the patterns certainly seem to verify that these messages for me are real, but, I'm not getting too caught up in it. Like, I think it's important to have a foot in both worlds, right? Like, we're here, we live in the 3D, this is where we are. We have to reconcile with that. We have to reconcile with being in the material and being in the physical, which is hard and not always very comfortable, but it's where we are. But also being able to traverse, right? To be able to go to these other places energetically, mentally, with consciousness, with energy, and have these interactions and gather information. And, it certainly has helped me feel that I do finally know or have at least a clearer sense of what my purpose is in this life. Because the whole time, even being a teacher, which is a very meaningful thing, and, my whole career has been with special education, children that have special needs. That's my passion. I absolutely love it. I love working with nonverbal autistic children. Absolutely love it. But the teachings, the bureaucracy of it, the school system, and the whole system of education from the federal level down is just not my vibe whatsoever. And I think it's extremely, in some ways, detrimental to the development of the human being. So I'm not a fan, But this world is where I really am myself. This is where I really flourish and really come back to myself and come back to be, come back to all those abilities that I had when I was a child. I finally have gotten them back and I'm growing them, so it's amazing. Yeah.
Wow. Arcturus was asking what conference that was. I think the one with Grant, or if it was a conference or event.
Yeah, it wasn't a conference. It was a very small event. It's called the Worldwide Metaphysical Tribe, and it's run by a friend of mine named Deb Frew. Her last name is F-R, oh gosh, E-U-H or F-R-U-E-H. I can't remember, but Deb Frew, and the event is the Worldwide Metaphysical Tribe. It happens every single year in rural Illinois, and it's really wonderful.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah.
What did Grant think about your experience?
He thought it was nuts. We went to the hedge the next day. He wanted to know how tall it was. There was a measuring tape. He asked me to describe all the things I felt. Yeah, he was very curious. And then we talked about it after that. I told him about. I think he was even. No, he wasn't. He was with me during the CE5 part, and he was there. He was hearing all the people saying, "Oh, there's wow, there's this big energy that's come into the circle, and oh, it's over there." And then he heard the woman who had taken the photograph of us. She came up to us and was talking to us and showing us the picture, but I couldn't hear anything she was saying. So I'm just like, yeah, like I'm just being polite. The hell she's talking about, and I was just like, Grant be the one who was listening and responding to her. So he saw the photograph and thought it was interesting, and then she left. And he said to me, "Did you see the picture?" And I'm like, "No, what was that?" It's kind of hard to see. Like, you really have to look at it because it was taken in the dark. And then she used a filter to brighten to brighten it so that you can see more distinctly what's in there. Yeah, it was a funny experience. I was just totally unaware of what was going on. So he filled me in the next day, told me everything that had happened in the CE5, had me measure where I thought the being was, describe it. I think he did a sketch of it, asked me a whole bunch of questions. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So, are there any other experiences you'd like to talk about before I have some questions for you?
There's so many. I could go on and on, but I feel satisfied with whatever you want to
You
ask.
sure?
Or
Is there like one you really want to get out?
God. Well, the horse medicine retreat one was pretty amazing. I did have telepathic moments with horses that were witnessed by other people. That was pretty validating and
Wow.
helpful. Yeah. So one was that when we first got there were a group of us that were taking this horse medicine workshop. Again, Spirit had made me go because, so I had opened my laptop one day and signed in, and my Gmail had flashed up onto the screen and then disappeared, which was weird. And I thought it was a computer glitch. But when it flashed up on the screen, my eyes immediately went to the very first email, which was in bold because it was a new email. That's what it looked like, right? It looked like a brand new email that had arrived in my inbox, and it was in bold, and then it disappeared again. But in the title of that email, it said horse spirit connections, something about horses, and it was the location of this. It was this place called Horse Spirit Connections that I had reached out to, but I didn't even remember that I had. I'd reached out to them something like 8 months earlier or 6 months earlier, because Spirit had been saying to me for about a year, horses, 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 horses. And I was just like, okay, horses, what? Like, I don't get it. What? Horses. I don't get it. Tell me more. And eventually it became horses and cowboys, and then it became this particular visualization of a cowboy who ended up being the guy who owned Horse Spirit Connections. I saw him, the guy from my vision, when I arrived there. It was the same guy, red hair,
What?
6 feet tall, yeah, a certain kind of hat on. It was him, right? And then, so anyway, so it flashed up on my screen, looked like there was a brand new email in bold from Horse Spirit Connections, disappeared. So I thought, oh, computer glitch, that's weird. So I opened my email up again. There's no new email, and there certainly isn't one from Horse Spirit Connections, but I saw it. So I knew I saw it, and so I Googled it, and it had come in 2 months before into my inbox, but it was advertising the horse medicine workshop that weekend, like that weekend that I saw,
Yeah.
right? So the time was just too weird. And so I thought, okay, I get it. I knew it was spirit. Okay, so I have to go to this. So I signed up right away, and I went, saw the cowboy who ended up being the guy who owned the place. That was even more validation that I was supposed to be there. And then the first day, the group of us, there were 5 of us in the group, we were supposed to go into the barn and do what they called, I think, standing with the horses. You just stand near them. You choose 2 or 3 of them, and you have a notebook, and you just stand near them, not touching them, not trying to interact with them, not talking, being totally quiet, and you just write down whatever you pick up. And so
Wow.
I chose 3 horses. I wrote down what I picked up, and then we went back to, we collected back as a group again, and we shared what we had gotten, and what I had gotten was totally 100% accurate, which I wasn't expecting. I just thought I was getting, like, my own idea of what each horse was like. So that was pretty interesting, and the guy who was running the place took note. It was kind of like, okay. And he came up to me and said, you really were bang on with the horses. Like, did you look us up? Did you do research on us or something? And I said, no, I just knew I had to come here, and I came, right? And
You mean like what the horse's like character was, or what what they've done, or what do you
yeah,
mean?
what they were thinking,
Okay.
where they were from, what their personalities were like, and I hadn't met them before at all, right? So this is
Where they
within
were from too?
where they were from, yeah. So this one
Wow.
horse, this white horse, which is the most kind of shamanic horse on the land, meaning he's got a very special, powerful kind of spirit. He his name was Contador, and he had been a wild horse, and he was captured, and then he was put into, I think, work. I can't remember. I think he ended up at an Amish farm or something like that. I didn't write that down, but I knew he had been wild, and I saw him on this island and running around, the sand and the ocean, and that he had a very, very wild personality, and that he was the wildest horse in the barn, that he was very rebellious, that he would do A, B, and C to demonstrate his rebellious personality. I got it all right. And so
Wow.
I knew right away, oh, okay. Like that was more validation that I was supposed to be there, clearly, right? And then the second day, we were supposed to go into the arena, and each person in the group would individually do this little meditation with the cowboy, the guy who was running the place, do a little meditation with him because he was guiding us through all of this. And then you walk into the arena with a horse, any horse. And I think they were chosen for us, actually. We were partnered up with random horses. We didn't get to choose them. So you walk into the arena with this horse that's been chosen for you, and you ask the horse to answer your heart's desire in that moment. So you just keep it really simple. It's as a practice exercise, right? So I just walked into the middle of the arena. The horse is at my, like, let's say my 6 o'clock, right? And then midnight's behind me, 3 and 9 are on the other side. I'm right in the middle of the arena. So the horse is at 6 o'clock. And I just sent a message to the horse in my head that my heart's desire was that I would really like to know what the horse's experience was of being a horse. And, could I like get to know it, and would it be interested in getting to know me? And then I said, if these things are okay with you, would you give me some kind of indication that you feel that it's okay with you? So right after I finished asking that question, like immediately after, the horse turned, walked around the length of the arena, came right up next to me, and put its eye up to my eye.
Whoa. Whoa. I just got goosebumps from that.
Yeah, it was really incredible. And then that happened, like the same thing of me asking a horse a question and asking it to demonstrate understanding or that it heard me. That happened 3 more times, and it was witnessed by the whole group. So
Oh
by
my
the end of
God.
that weekend, I
Wow.
was like, "Oh my God, I'm telepathic with horses." With horses, like, how did this happen? I didn't know this was possible, but
Wow.
it happened, and it was validated by the behavior of the horse, the timing, and the witnessing of the other people who knew. On two of the occasions they knew what question I was asking, and then there were setups in the arena that represented certain outcomes of questions we would ask.
Mm.
So it's hard to explain. You kind of had to be there, but the horse would go up to one of those setups to indicate what the answer was, if that makes
Oh
sense,
wow.
to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
question.
Huh.
And so that was another couple of ways that it showed up. It was really crazy. Yeah, it was a
Wow.
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful experience. And so since then, I've had telepathy with horses almost every time I've been around them. I think that's what it seems like. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to. You have to remind me when you come down to the Psy Games in Virginia, which August 1st, right? August 1st and 3rd. Is that what it is?
That's right. Yes.
Psy Games, run by a friend of ours, Hakeem Isler, is amazing. Yeah, please check it out if you want. When you come down, I gotta introduce you, if she's available, to a friend of mine who's she's the head of the engineering and ethics department at University of Virginia, like a
Oh,
40
wow.
year professor, very statured, and she is a horse whisperer, and she wrote a whole book about it. Her name is Dr. Rosalind Byrne,
Oh my gosh.
and she's an amazing woman. So I think you two would really hit it off.
That would be amazing. Yeah, I would love to meet her, especially if she's an actual horse whisperer, because I haven't met one yet. So that would be incredible.
You don't consider yourself one?
Uh, I'm not a huge fan of making statements. Like I feel like
Mm,
it's an experience I'm having, and I hope it will continue. Yeah.
okay, I like that. Have you had telepathic experiences with humans or any other beings
I have,
besides
yeah.
non-human beings?
Non-human beings, 100% for
Yeah.
sure. I've also had it with cats and dogs, and I've had it with my nonverbal autistic students. Not all of them, but a couple of them, yeah. Yeah.
Really? Okay, I didn't know
When
that.
I'm teaching them, when I'm working with them, I'm so distracted by all the to-dos and just taking care of them and making sure the day is going how it needs to go that I'm often in a very left brain space because you kind of have to be, right? You have to be organized. You have to keep the routine going, make sure all the kids are safe. They're little. They're in kindergarten. That's the class I'm teaching now. There's 8 of them. They're the cutest things you have ever seen. They're just, oh, they're the best. But they're running around all over the place. It's like witnessing a bowl of worms all day long. Like there's constant motion. They're constantly moving and just into everything, right? So anyway, you have to keep it organized. You have to keep routine going. You have to make sure they're safe. You have to do your job. You have to do some teaching. You have meetings. You have phone calls with parents, whatever. So you're in the left brain space. But whenever I've been able to remind myself, and whenever I've had the luxury of having a moment to just sit and connect with a kid, I've tried to do the telepathic thing, and it has worked a couple of times.
Wow.
Like once I called this kid named Alexander, who I had a really nice bond with. He was extremely, he was very rebellious. He didn't want to do any work. He didn't want to do anything. He just wanted to play and just enjoy the day, Anyway, I was working on connecting with him and getting him to be a little bit more motivated with his work. And he was sitting at his desk, and he was stimming. So stimming for autistic people means doing a repetitive movement or engaging with something repetitively, like a pencil or a hole in the wall, doesn't matter what it is, in a way that kind of is a comforting, soothing thing for them. It's repetitive. It gets them out of the immediate environment and gets them to a soothing place where they're able to kind of regulate their senses and their emotions. So he was staring at this hole in the wall and stimming and like looking at it and feeling it and all kinds of stuff. And I was diagonal across the room from him, and he was not aware. He was not paying any attention to me. He wasn't paying any attention to the rest of the kids either. He was just focusing on stimming, right? So he was in his own little world. And I sent him a message saying, Alexander, if you can hear me right now, turn around and look at me. And he turned around and looked at me.
Wow. Okay.
That was pretty cool. Yeah. And then I've had it happen a couple of times with, there's a little boy who's in my kindergarten class right now, completely nonverbal. He's just, I really adore this kid. He was very depressed when I first started at this job, and now he's so happy, and he's really engaging more with me, with the EA, the education assistant, the other students. So he's trying to make noises, almost like he's trying to make sounds, right? And so there's been a few times I've had with him where he comes up to me and he's kind of urgently making this sound, which is a kind of ooh kind of sound. And he's clearly asking me for something, right? He's asking me a question or he's asking me for something. But when I was first getting to know him and he would do that, I didn't have a clue what he wanted. Now I can say, oh, it's as if I'm reading his mind. Oh, you want this or you need this right now. And then I'll get it for him. And then he's immediately delighted, like I've just answered his question.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Huh. And did all this happen for you before you ever heard of this being a thing, like with nonverbal autistic children, whether it was the telepathy tapes or any other books that had come out?
No. I mean, I definitely have had an awareness of being a very intuitive educator, but I definitely did not think about telepathy at all. And then I found out about the telepathy tapes, and that's when I started experimenting with the students.
Oh, okay. So you started experimenting after. I see. Wow. And so have you, I assume you've finished the telepathy tapes or at least gone through most of it. What do you think of that now? And have you gotten in touch with anyone associated with them and talked about what they're doing there?
With the telepathy tapes?
Yeah.
Yes. So there's a woman named Dahlia who just did an amazing demo on psi abilities at CITD at Contact in the Desert, which you and I were both at. That's how we met. Yeah. It was absolutely exceptional this year. It was off the charts. Like, really, it was fantastic. And one of the highlights was the Psi games and the presentation, not the Psi games itself, but the buzz around it, and the presentations by Hakeem Eisler, our mutual friend. Hakeem is a close friend of mine. He asked me to help out with the talks and the demo if I could. And so I was there to support him as well. as being there on behalf of CUSAC, Tom Campbell's organization, and to see my friends and to have a wonderful time. So Dahlia and I had connected last fall. We were supposed to be roomies at a Mindsight retreat, which is what Dahlia specializes in. That was here in Ontario. And long story short, I wasn't able to go. But now I think that that was not an accident, that she and I would have been roommates. We ended up being there at the Mindsight retreat together again in May of this year. And I was a first-time participant. It was my first time there, but Dahlia was there already as a demonstrator because she had been there in September.
Oh, wow.
Her abilities had come through big time. Yeah, and she had been practicing, and they had really taken off. And so she was asked to come back as a demonstrator for this Mindsight retreat. And so she was there. I got to know her a bit, and she talked to me about her daughter, who's nonverbal autistic, 14 years old, and highly, highly telepathic. So she and her daughter were both at CITD, and they both did a really amazing demo. And
Sorry, do you mind explaining what Mindsight is and what that retreat was about?
yeah, yeah. So Mindsight is essentially seeing in real time without your eyes, instead with your mind. So there's a way of training your perception to open up your mind sight, to open up your psychic sight, so that you can see, despite having a blindfold on that completely blocks out any light. And then you can also add eye patches. You can put eye patches that have stickers all the way, like sticky, a sticky, what do you call it? Like edge all the way around it, so that it completely blocks out light when you put it directly over your eyes. And then you put the blindfold on after that. That blocks out even more light. And the idea is you want to see things that are in front of you at first. So the first thing you do is you practice with colors and you practice with shapes. So, you're trying to see if there's a star, circle, or square in front of you, or you're trying to see if it's blue, red, or yellow, right? And there's a whole process for this. And then over time, you start to see through the mask, essentially, but with your mind. So it's quite incredible. It's been scientifically studied. There's books about it. It's just more evidence of human potential, I think, that, we've been taught is so incredibly far out, but actually isn't at all. It really is accessible to people. So Dahlia is very, very good at Mindsight, and her daughter is very, very good at telepathy. And so the two of them were demonstrating those skills on stage at Contact in the Desert, and they will be at the Psy Games this summer as well.
Wow. And I saw that the Psy Games YouTube channel posted the whole video of that panel, the panel with the demonstration from Contact.
Yes,
so
right.
We'll post a link to that later.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk a bit about the Psy Games? Can you tell the audience what that's about?
Sure. So Hakeem is a close friend of mine, Hakeem Eisler, who created the Psy Games. I've been supporting him with it just in small ways in the background since the beginning. Like I helped him find the venue when he was first looking for a venue about a year ago.
It's at the Omnia Hotel, right, in Charlottesville?
The Omnia Hotel, in Charlottesville, Virginia. And it's an absolutely beautiful hotel. I mean, it's stunning. People are going to love it. It's a beautiful, beautiful setting. But most intriguing is the way Hakeem has designed the Psy Games. It really is very well done. There's going to be 5 different Psy areas of ability that people will be essentially competing in. So there's going to be children, there's going to be adults. People apply, they have to practice a bit, demonstrate some ability in a certain way. There's an app for that on the Psy Games website. And we will post the links as well under this chat, or under this video, sorry. And so it's going to be the first of its kind. The Psy Games is really the first international or national event that showcases Psy abilities, human potential in this way, in a scientific way, in an organized way, in an ethical way, but also a really experimental, playful, exciting way. So it's going to be something else. And there's really going to be incredible people there as well. Tom Campbell will be there, of My Big Toe, My Big Theory of Everything. The supporters and speakers and lecturers are really just incredible. The judges are incredible. So I really encourage people to go to the website and look at the lineup. There's some incredibly stellar people that are going to be part of this event, which gives it a lot of extra excitement because you're going to have these brilliant minds there observing and studying and watching what's going on. Speaking of which, after Dahlia's demo and her daughter at CITD, scientists like Jesse Michaels, for example, and people like Chris Ramsey, the magician, who are very interested in illusion, very interested in how all of this works, they just grabbed her and wanted to know more. And so they all ended up having lunch together, and there's another video of her demonstrating at lunchtime. That is also on social media. Hakeem just
Yep.
posted it on his YouTube channel, on the Sci Games
Yeah.
YouTube channel today. So I think there should be two different videos, one of them on stage at CITD and then one
Yep.
at lunch. Yeah. So it's
Yeah, I
pretty
saw the lunch
exciting.
one. It's crazy. I missed it in person, but Hakeem told me about it, and then I just saw the video a few hours ago, and it's wild. Like
It's
Dahlia
wild.
just has the mind sight blindfold on, and she's kind of like calling out the bill total at the restaurant, and
Yeah. Yeah.
the what was it, like a few other things, like what people were holding up on their phones. Jesse Michaels held up an image of the Nazca mummies, and she was like, "It looks like some kind of monster thing." And yeah, it was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it's for
Wow.
real. It's for real. And Dahlia's very, very good at it. Her daughter is absolutely amazing. A lot of people were commenting on her daughter's just presence. You know, she's
Mm.
a little bit otherworldly and very talented and very intelligent. She had a wonderful time. I asked her if she was overstimulated because she is nonverbal autistic. So I asked her, you know, are you doing okay? She knows I work with autistic kids. I said, you know, can I support you in any way? She just used her pen to tap out her answer on her letterboard. Nope, doing fine. Everything's going
Wow,
well. Yeah, she's
that's
having a
awesome.
wonderful time. So that's really
Wow.
exciting. And with the Tom Campbell's nonprofit CUSAC, which is the Center for the Unification of Science and Consciousness, which I'm now the director of communications for, we're doing some experiments that have to do specifically with mindsight. That's what we're starting with. So what we want to do is take someone with Dahlia's abilities, someone who's very motivated, very committed, driven to practice, believes that mindset is possible and that they can do it. We want that person to let us know that they're interested in practicing with us, studying with us. We'll help them practice and study, probably in a group. And then if they have ability enough to be able to break through and have success in a certain way through the mindfold blackout mask, but then also through black construction paper, which would be over top of the mask that adds an additional barrier. If a person can see with mindsight through those layers and can see in a repeating way shapes, colors, words, whatever it is, that person will be flown to Spain and studied in a lab or flown somewhere else and studied in a lab. Like, we're taking this very seriously. We really want to help to prove that mindset is real and to provide evidence that people are capable of this. You know, you don't have to be a child. There's another theory out there that you can only have success with psychic ability or mindsight or remote viewing, not remote viewing, but mindsight if you're a child, if you're open and receptive as a child, and that adults
Mm.
can't do it. But that's definitely not the case. So it's very exciting. It's just exciting to be alive at this time, honestly, with all these incredible things happening for human potential.
It
And
is.
people like Tom Campbell, people like, you know, all of these incredible people, we could list a whole bunch of them who are brilliant, who are serious, who are talented, who are educated, who are thoughtful, and, you know, really are invested in proving that consciousness is a thing and that it's possibly at the root of all of our existence.
Thank you. Can you talk a bit about Tom Campbell's background for those who don't know him? I mean, I know he was a physicist, right? And he's
Yes,
got my big toe theory on everything, or theory of
yes,
everything. And I know he was. Some people don't realize this, but he was one of Robert Monroe's first like explorers. He called them, right?
that's right.
From the Monroe Institute. And yeah, there's a few recordings of him out there using just his initials, I think, TC, that are very interesting and talk about communicating and experiencing beings from other worlds.
Yeah,
It's fascinating. But can you share a
yeah.
bit more about him?
It is. Well, I mean, I think you covered it. He was a former NASA physicist, you know, brilliant, well educated, a long career, reputable career in physics, and a very diligent, thoughtful person. You know, believes in giving his work as much integrity as possible. But he's had his own experiences with consciousness that he can't explain. And so he's been looking for the mechanism of consciousness. I personally don't think there is a mechanism, but I don't know as much as Tom Campbell, so maybe I'm wrong. But you know, he's
You have a
brilliant.
different wisdom, a different knowledge. So
Good point. Good point. He's so serious. He's so committed, and he's so passionate about it. I mean, he's still traveling all over the world doing talks. He's been on podcasts all over the place recently. He's extremely committed to this. And so he started this nonprofit in 2018 that is called the Center for the Unification of Science and Consciousness. It has a board made up of bright thinkers, scientists, business people, people who have had consciousness experiences, who have played around with consciousness themselves, who understand that it's real and are invested in seeing this understanding progress into science and into a sort of more mainstream level of society and culture. Yeah, so he's really trying his best to bring that home. But my colleague David, so David Chartrand lives in lives in Montreal. Why did I say New York? He lives in Montreal. And he's a French-Canadian, and I met him at the Mindsight retreat that I mentioned. I met Dahlia at. We really hit it off. He's extremely intelligent, an unbelievable work ethic. I've practically never met anybody like him. He works something like 14 hours a day and has done that for 20 years. He's started several companies, sold them. He's now running a VR company. But his passion is consciousness. And so he approached Tom Campbell and said, let me help you. I want to help you with what you're doing. So he got to know Tom, and Tom eventually passed over CUSAC to David. So David's the CEO and CFO. So we met at this Mindset retreat, and he hired me for the job by the end of the week, which was kind of amazing. Wow. And also very synchronous. Yeah, it was meant to be, 100% meant to be. It's an answer to something I've been asking for a long time, which is, wanting to work in this field for real. So, yeah, so David is so smart, an absolutely wonderful person, and it's been a joy collaborating with him. I think Tom did the right thing by entrusting him with CUSAC. And he's going to take it in a more progressive, I hate to say youthful, but energetic direction, because Tom is so focused on everything he's already doing. He doesn't really have time to run CUSAC and to focus on all of the research that needs to be done. And the board members are there to support what's happening, but they're not there to create it. So David and I are trying to create this research by investigating Mindsight, and Dahlia is part of that.
That's amazing. Wow. Yeah. So you just go to these conferences and retreats, and you just get jobs and podcast co-host positions left and right? That's amazing.
It kind of seems like it. Actually, we haven't told our origin story yet about how we even started on this podcast. This might be a good time to do that. What do you think?
Okay, yeah. One last question on what you're doing with CUSAC. Is that what it is? CUSAC.
Yeah, CUSAC.
So there are, there's rightfully, there's often a concern voiced when it comes to children and these types of like experiments or tests, and the question of ethics sometimes doesn't get covered as much as it should. Can you talk a bit about that and, what your position is and what CUSAC is doing in regards to that?
In terms of children, nothing yet. CUSAC is not doing anything with regard to children. We're looking at adults first. I think there's an interest. Actually, Alex Gomez Marin, who is a Spanish researcher and scientist, he's part of what we're doing. And he asked me the same thing when he found out I was an educator. What do you think about this? And how can we do better? So he told me that this is something people have probably heard before, that when children have abilities and they're studied or they're invited to go further into their abilities and further into their anomalous experiences. Oh, hi, David. Oh, my goodness. David is here. Thank you for coming by, David. It's great to see you. Thank you. So often when children are investigating all of this stuff, they end up having scary experiences. Like this one child was seeing the faces of his siblings distorting in real time, in real life, while he was awake. In the middle of the day, he'd see his siblings' faces just become distorted. Another kid was having terrible nightmares. So these things can happen. And so Alex gave me those examples and said, what do you think we could be doing about it? It has a lot to do with how the children are supported before, during, and after, in my opinion. And a lot of it is emotional support. A lot of it is providing a sense of security and safety in a way that they understand. So it's not just putting them in a safe room that has 4 walls and there's a nice, safe, comfortable chair. It's helping them feel safe inside, not just with what's happening, but also with their own abilities. And so I think that, it makes me think of my time teaching children who are deaf and hard of hearing. I'm deaf myself. Most of those kids had never had a teacher who was also deaf. And their eyes would light up when they met me because they knew I understood their experience. There's something about that that is incredibly valuable. And I think for children who are going to be studied in terms of psychic ability, that's another thing that we need to be looking into is how someone who has experience with what they're being asked to do in whatever capacity and who has been able to integrate it and who has been able to understand it enough to feel at peace with it, feel confident and comfortable with it, that kind of person should be able to be there to have conversations with these kids and just help them feel that whatever's happening is okay. And at the same time, if the kid doesn't feel like it's okay or the parents don't, they need to be let go. Like there's no reason why they should still be kept there. You know, it's not responsible to do that.
Yeah. Thank you. And I know there's the Psy Games is supposed to have like events and competitions for children too, correct? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I know? I know Hakeem talks about ethics a lot. So do you mind sharing a bit if you're aware of that, like what they're doing with children's competitions and what the wider like goal is of what they're doing?
I'm not one of the organizers or founders, so I can't really speak to it in an official or professional capacity. I can only give you my sense, which is that Hakeem is definitely concerned about ethics. He's a martial arts teacher of children, has been for many, many, many years. And with martial arts, there's also risk. There's also ethics involved. You have to make sure children are safe, that they're being respected, that they know how to understand the kind of moves that you're doing, which can be seen as violent or they can get hurt, right? Mm. So he's familiar with that. And he's also familiar with interacting with their parents, knowing what parents want for their children and making sure that parents are being included in the process. So I know that he is not like the children are going to be supervised. They're going to have parents there or guardians there who know them well, who are looking out for them. They're not going to be separated from those people. You know, there's going to be people who are looking out for the kids, volunteers, making sure they have what they need. If they need to get away in a quiet room and have a break, that's going to be possible, that kind of thing. And then cool. The future goal or the vision is ultimately that psi ability is something that can be passed on to younger generations by teaching them that it's real, by teaching them that they can do it and that is also real, and that they can teach others how to do it and they can share the experience of being connected to greater human potential ultimately in that way, right? So who wouldn't be excited by that? Like what kid wouldn't feel like that's absolutely magical and they want to continue doing it, right? So the idea is that if we reach children and help to teach children what we're really capable of, and they learn it in such a sound way that early in their life where they're supported by people around them, adults around them, and they're being given a totally contradictory message from what the norm is, which is this is all weird and bad and maybe your child's going crazy or maybe there's something wrong with them or maybe there's something wrong with you as their parent that they're having this experience or, you know, put them on medication or whatever it is, just basically shut it up. That's the norm, right? That's what we've always been told. But these parents who are interested in these kinds of events for their children, they know that parenting has to be done differently. They know that children need to be raised differently. They know that these things need to be nurtured in children and that they're inherently part of human nature. So there's a lot of different parts of this that I think are showing an expanded amount of possibilities for how to help children develop their abilities in a responsible, ethical way, where they're being respected. They're not just being used as a commodity, right, or something to study. Yeah.
And to be clear, adults can access these capacities too, right? It's not too late, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But this is really, I mean, we're trying to create a new world, right? We're trying to move the human race forward, and adults doing it is great, but the children are incredibly important, and we need to be listening to them and honoring what they're able to do, what they're capable of doing, a lot more than we are. Yeah.
There's a lot of remembrance there that we've lost for sure.
Definitely.
Wow. Cool. Okay. Well, let's talk about contact in the desert a bit, if you want, if we have time.
It was
You have
amazing.
time? I have time.
I have time. How many hours has
Cool.
it
All
been?
right.
Oh my God. Okay, keep going.
We're at 2.5. So we'll wrap it up in a bit shortly. So yeah, Contact. It was my first time going.
Me too. Oh,
Uh, I, I mean, I just felt the calling to go. I met a lot of people at Archives of the Impossible conference in April who said they were going, and I was like, yeah, it sounds kind of fun. I wasn't sure what to expect. I thought it was going to be a bit more kooky than it actually was, but it was actually very well balanced of like a good mix of like some of the more scientific and scholarly people and presenters, and some of the more like more on the spiritual side and researchers and things like that. So yeah, it was a good mix. I thought the crowd was amazing. The conversations that happen on the sidelines are amazing. It's just the way you engage and connect with people, especially so many experiencers in one spot. It really, I think I told you this. It just feels like I got this sense that looking around at the room one day or in the lobby area, that it's just I could sense that this was a place of belonging that most of these people did not have back home, like back in the real like Muggle world, right? Like there was something here, this space created where they could be more authentic, and yeah, you could feel that for sure energetically. What
definitely.
was your take on it, on the conference
It was amazing. I mean, everything
and
you
how we
said.
met?
Yeah, everything you said. I mean, yeah, the conversations were absolutely outstanding. The social scene is definitely my favorite thing about it. But the content was top notch. It really was, and I also appreciated that there was something for everyone. So there was some very
Yeah.
intellectual stuff. There was some wooey stuff. There was stuff that was in the middle. But what I'm especially loving is that the people who are the leaders in the field are crossing over into the woo. It seems like more and more, even if they're hesitant to admit it. There's just more understanding that the phenomena is a thing. Experiencers have had experiences, and that there really is something going on that needs to be listened to, right? Rather than dismissed when we don't really understand it. So I appreciate that. And also, more researchers, I think, or more leaders in the field are having their own experiences. Like I was talking to James Fox about this because James and I are buddies, and we will catch up at the conferences. And he was telling me what he's been up to, and there were some things that he said which I will not repeat because I think they're personal to him, and it should be his story to tell. But in my opinion, he's having more and more and more experiences of his own abilities coming to the forefront of his own life. And
Hmm.
I'm not even saying like big dramatic things have happened, just his intuition, his foresight, his psychic ability, and then synchronicities, and then a few interesting things that have happened that he can't really explain. So, you know, you would think with somebody like James Fox, who's chasing cases and facts and data and laws and, history, and he is nailing down specific cases, timelines, and dates and names and all that. You would think he would be incredibly left brain, but James has his own interest in this from an esoteric point of view also. And I think that's the case for many, many people. Like Ross Coulthart told me that when he was a child, he would walk through the forest in New Zealand with adults that he knew, and they would communicate with the trees. I
Wow.
mean, yeah, like
Wow.
I think, yeah. And he just said this was totally normal and this is how he grew up. And, magic was just everywhere. And that's how it was. That's just how the
Hmm.
world was to him.
Yeah.
So, so many of these people in their suits and ties and everything, they seem to be like not into any of this, or as if they've had no experience with any of this. But all of us are doing this for a very similar reason. We're just on different places in the umbrella of it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
I love
I had the same experience at Archives of the Impossible conference in Texas at Rice University. I mean, I met some of the people presenting who are on the more even like nuts and bolts side of this phenomena, pretty far on that side, scientifically. And yeah, I mean, they slowly start to open up about some of their personal experiences, and they are effing woo. Like they are pretty woo, though,
Yep.
those experiences. And yeah, some people are still unfortunately caught in the stigma and the nature of our systems of control and influence that make it hard to talk about these things. And I can't blame them for it. You know, it's the world we live in. But yeah, there's things converging, there's forces converging that are making it easier and easier, I think, to talk about these things, even if people are still using, you know, different languages and maybe more reductionist terminology about it. But it's the conversations are happening, and
Yeah.
hopefully, I think what you and I will hopefully be bringing to the table is to complement those converging forces. So
Yes, that's how I feel too. I mean, that's definitely a big part of what brought us together in doing this was that we both appreciate, the groundedness and yet the willingness to explore that we both have. And we both think it's important to know what's like to gather information and have an understanding of what's going on in the community and the research, but also to remain connected to our spiritual selves and to the spirits that really I think really are out there. I mean, this is my
yeah,
experience. This is many people's experience. So it
yeah,
doesn't make sense to me to say it's not real, especially when it's cross-cultural and it's ancient and modern and it's been all over the world in human history, in documented, written, portrayed in so many ways. It's
yep,
it's just absolutely undeniable to me. So I'm super, super, super happy to have gone to contact, been in that vibration, had so many incredible experiences, synchronicities, magical things happen, incredible conversations, seeing how the content and conversations are shifting and changing and becoming more and more expansive and more about consciousness, actually. And
yeah.
and meeting you and the cosmetic way that this happened for us to do this podcast together, it's wonderful. You're an outstanding person, Anthony, and it's an honor, honestly, to work with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Likewise. I mean, I knew it like the moment I met you, that, that you were someone that I was looking for in terms of the type of character and person I would want for this show. And yeah, like I said at the beginning, it was just, I think I had that thought. I went to bed. Next morning, I had the resignation from my former co-host, Boutaina. Um, and I just like looked at it and laughed. Like, I mean, I was sad that she was leaving, but I was like, what the hell? Like, I just thought about this last night after I met you. And that was the night before the conference even started, and we met through our mutual friend Hakeem. So
Hmm.
yeah, it was fascinating. And within like 24 hours, you were my co-host. That was it.
Well, we both, I
Wild.
mean, when something happens like that where it's just so easy, clear, and the flow is just there, and all the support that we're feeling about it and how seamless it's been, that says a lot. I think when something is too much work, it's not necessarily something you should go for, right? Not
Yeah,
that working hard isn't important, it is, but when you're trying to make something happen, if you keep trying to make it happen and you're going against the flow, I think if you're just allowing it to occur, and it
yeah,
occurs so magically, you can't say no.
yeah. Back to contact. Was there anyone that you met there for the first time that you think is doing amazing work?
Yeah, I met Ross Coulthart for the first time. We talked a couple of times. I really, really, really respect him. Ross is a gentleman. He's a really dignified person. This is my experience of him. He's highly intelligent, incredibly kind, incredibly respectful, very dignified, really clear on his boundaries, and very clear on what he is willing to engage with and what he's not. Very knowledgeable, very open minded, very curious. So I
Mm.
loved meeting him. And I loved getting to spend more time with James Fox, he's just a fun guy. Like he's a fantastic storyteller. He's got so much
Yeah,
energy and personality.
I was there for some of those, and yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Get ready, folks.
Yeah. And then also so many good friends of mine, Lori Wagner, Paul Vidal, who's also an experiencer. I
Paul is
enjoy making
great.
connections for people, helping people out. Yeah, this guy named Jabin Abraham, who is very into OBEs. He was wonderful, great new friend. These two brothers, Alberto and Adrian, they were fantastic people.
Hmm.
Molly, got to know her, a new mutual friend. Just so many good people, like really good
Yeah.
people, like good-hearted people. And then also podcasters. Michael Phillips, who does Third Eye Drops, he and I connected really well. We have to have a conversation about psychedelics. I really want to talk to him about that.
That
And
is a
also,
great, if anyone, yeah, that is a great show, a podcast. If you've never heard of it, definitely go check it out. Third Eye
really
Drops.
good.
Michael's doing amazing work there. Yeah.
And he's such a lovely person. Like he's just these are just such great people. That's what I enjoy most about it is the warmth and open-heartedness, the curiosity, the sense of humor, the intelligence. Everybody's so thoughtful. Not everybody,
Mhm.
but like a lot of people are so thoughtful. So I really appreciated that, like very, very much the caliber of human beings that were there. People who are
Yeah.
really looking at themselves and taking responsibility for who they are and what they're doing in the world and wanting to be part of whatever the hell is going on Earth right now. It feels like a massive shift is occurring of some kind. I mean, my,
Yep.
my 86-year-old father, I told you this, I still cannot get over this. My 86-year-old father, who's like a total atheist, never believed in religion, never believed in spirituality, thinks it's all bunk. He's been saying to me, I think there's other dimensions. I think something big is happening on Earth right now. He had
Wow.
he had this incredible dream of watching a universe form.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is my
Wow.
dad. And of course, he's an artist, he's a creator. He has a wonderful creative mind, very imaginative. But hearing these things come out of his mouth, these are not things I think he would have said 25 years ago or when I was growing up.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
I feel like whatever it is that's occurring, it's just coming through people, even people who never believed it before. They're feeling this. There's something very, very powerful going on. And we're like lucky enough to get to be a part of it because we've chosen to be here to do this, right? It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's super important and it's a wild ride and it's so much fun and it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You had some interesting experiences happen, right? Throughout contact. I was there in real time for some of them, right?
Oh my God, I don't even know where to start. Uh, what should I start with, Anthony? Help me.
I mean, we can talk about the Skywatch with Chris Bledsoe. That was pretty interesting.
You had more of an experience with that than I did. Do you want to talk about
Okay, yeah.
your
I mean, yeah, for that one, yeah, the Chris Bledsoe and his family were all there, and they did the Skywatch, kind of in a grassy area behind the hotel that the conference was at. Still, like there's a lot of light pollution there, and it was pretty cloudy that night. Not great conditions, but several hundred people showed up. Chris and his family and a few other researchers were in the center of this like circle area that was set up, and then everyone kind of wrapped around them in this big wide circle in this field. And Chris just kind of guided us through. He has this like soft, smooth way of talking, and he was just talking a bit about his how he connects and his meditation, and kind of talking about the nature of reality and the relational uh, relationship he has with these beings or these others. And every once in a while we would see something that clearly looked anomalous, that would just appear out of nowhere. And sometimes like people would go out and pull out like a flight tracker and check, and it would be a plane. Sometimes they had some people with satellite trackers, and they pointed out some satellites. And then there were a few others though that did not check off any of those boxes that did show up. One interesting one was right after Chris had said, I think he described the nature of these orbs, and he was trying to make a distinction between what they weren't and what they were. And he said that they were, I forgot the exact word he used, but he said they were something like guardians, something like that, or not protectors, something like guardians or watchers. And as soon as he said that, one of these anomalous orbs just appeared out of nowhere. And not many people saw it. I happened to be looking in that direction, and I saw it. And it lasted for maybe 5 seconds. It kind of flashed and then disappeared. And I mean, the timing was what was really interesting about that one. There was also a weird incident, perhaps some high strangeness happening there, as is often the case with these phenomena, but where we saw, I don't think you saw this one. I know I saw it. It was these two, I mean, they must have been 1,000 feet in altitude. These like high flying birds that we saw them just kind of like floating, gliding at that height with their wings flapping. And I was kind of like, and I think there was a light next to them, if I remember correctly, or an orb. And and they were flying parallel, and I was just wondering, like, why, like, how am I able to see them from that height? And they're birds. Like, how big does a bird have to be for us to see it from that high? And they had this glow to them. I think they may have been reflecting the moonlight, which was kind of behind the clouds, but they were glowing. They were like reflective. You could see the light bouncing off them. 1,000 feet up at night. And it was just odd to see. And I kind of felt myself, I was kind of in a liminal space, like where, kind of like what you were talking about earlier when you had your experience with the light beings when you watched the Babazar documentary. Kind of like, and when you come out of that, you're almost instantly, there's this like clear difference between being in it and being out of it. When you start wondering, like, oh, you start having the ontological shock, like, was that like really, did that really happen? Did I just see that? It feels almost dreamlike. I think that's the best way I could describe it. It's like, it was almost like I was in a dream state seeing that happen. And then within a few seconds, I was out of it, doubting what I just saw. So that was interesting. And then the final thing was, I mean, it was kind of some people felt let down, I think, because there weren't that many orbs that showed up. And Chris was, also like apologetic, and, he was, you could tell that he wanted to see more. And we were about to wrap it up and call it a night. Most people had left. Probably less than half of the people were still remaining. And I walked up closer to the circle, and we were just going to get up a little closer to Chris before we left. I was with my friend, and we saw a massive owl, like, I don't know how many, maybe like 3 to 4 foot wingspan, flying right above us, like where this was happening. And I mean, just above the tree line, like that low, and it just glided slowly across the field and right over us. And I was just like, of course we see an owl. Like, that's so fitting, right? as we're wrapping it up,
right.
In case we were upset or sad, here's a little owl to make things more magical for you. So that was really nice. I enjoyed that. So thank you to the owl or whoever sent it.
Mike Cleland would have approved for sure. He's the owl guy, right? Yeah. Yeah, he would have been excited if he saw that. He probably would say that was a screen memory, right? That it was really like a UFO or an ET or something like that, because that's one of the things that they do. But then again, it could also have been an owl. I mean, owls are really magical creatures. They visit, I think, more than this dimension. So who knows?
Yeah. Well, and then you had some travel happenings, right? That turned weird.
So weird. I mean, so weird. Like, I still can't get over this. There were a couple things that I could have, if it wasn't for everything else, I would have thought, oh, it was just me being dumb. Like I wasn't thinking clearly. But like I said before, I'm a seasoned traveler. I've traveled a lot. I have never, ever, ever, ever booked myself the wrong flight into the wrong airport before, which is what I did. So instead of booking myself to fly into Palm Springs, because CITD, Contact in the Desert, is in Indian Wells, so it's like a half hour or less cab ride. I flew into LAX. I almost said LAX. I flew into LAX, which is 6 hours, 4 hours, whatever, away, depending on how you get to and from Palm Springs and LAX. So I arrive in LAX and I'm walking through, about to grab a cab, which I think is like 20 minutes away from the hotel. And I'm looking around going, oh no. I knew right away what I'd done. Never, ever done that in my life. And anyway, so arrived. I don't think anything weird happened until the very end of the trip, when I decided to book myself. I couldn't change my ticket, so I had to book myself a new one to fly out of Palm Springs. I also had this really strong feeling that I should stay an extra day. And there was this major synchronicity that happened to me, a major synchronicity anyway, as a result of this. But anyway, just with the travel stuff. So I booked myself to fly out of Palm Springs. And in my mind, I could not get a flight out on Tuesday, June the 3rd. I couldn't get a flight out. I just couldn't find one. So in my mind, I booked this flight on Monday, but at least that was my original day of leaving, but at least it was from Palm Springs, not LAX, right? And I had to take, when I arrived in LAX, I had to spend 3 hours trying to figure out how to get from there to Palm Springs. And eventually the cheapest, most practical option was to take a lift. It was 450 American dollars. It was insane.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
Anyway. That's the whole thing.
What had you just arrived when I met you and Hakeem? Is that when you had just arrived?
I actually don't remember meeting you for the first time. It's just like you were all of a sudden.
It's all blur.
I don't remember meeting.
It was Wednesday night, like before the conference started. We met up in the lobby. Hakeem had just arrived because I was texting him.
Yes.
And
so I had arrived.
He hadn't eaten.
He arrived, I think, at like 10 or 11 or something. I arrived at maybe 7. So I'd been there for a few hours, yeah. And anyway, then the CITD passes, and I booked my flight to leave to go back to Toronto from Palm Springs. Couldn't get a flight on the Tuesday the 3rd. So Monday the 2nd, I wake up, finish all my packing, text everybody, I love you, bye, like giving people hugs, saying goodbye to everybody, and taking stock, and, then jumped in a cab, ran to the airport, get to Palm Springs Airport, go up to the desk, and find out my flight is actually the following day on Tuesday. And again, not something I've ever done in my life before. I don't do this. I'm a pretty organized person. So this was just like, what the hell? So anyway, got back in the cab, come back to the hotel, and then the synchronicity was that night, because I had booked the flight actually to spend an extra day, which had been my instinct, right, to spend one more day. That night, I ended up meeting the guy who was making this film S4 with Babazar. He works closely with Babazar. He is a dear friend of his. I just couldn't believe it. It was absolutely meant to be, in my opinion, that happened. So that was fantastic. Then the next day, wake up, get myself ready to go, find out that coincidentally I'm on the same flight as you to go
correct
Palm Springs to Chicago. I mean, of course. And also we had been trying to find time, I think, during the whole CITD event to sit down and talk about the podcast. We didn't get any time. There were so many great conversations. So this was just...
And you were flying to Toronto, I was flying to DC, and we still end up on the same first leg. Yeah.
Yep, we still ended up on the same first flight. So that was pretty great. And so we're like, yes, we'll get to talk about the podcast. This is perfect. Meanwhile, we get in the cab. We're leaving the hotel to go to the airport to fly to Chicago. And you say to me, okay, I think we should check in. We should probably check in right now in the cab. It's already a little bit late, and maybe we could get seats together. So you check in on your phone. You have absolutely no problem. You check in. Everything's fine. I'm on my phone, and I'm getting repeated error messages. I'm getting messages saying you have to enter this data in this field with no numbers or symbols, and there are no numbers or symbols. I'm only adding letters. You must only add letters. I'm only adding letters. What's the problem? So I just couldn't do it. Couldn't check in. Just way too many problems. We get to the airport. I check in at the desk. We get our boarding passes, you and I together. And then we go to our flight, and your boarding pass gets booped, like boop, at the thing where you're supposed to go down the ramp to the plane. No problem, you're in. Mine has to be booped 4 or 5 times. It just isn't working. We got our boarding
Yeah.
passes together. Why would mine be screwy and yours is fine? It doesn't make any sense. So then we get on the plane and fly to Chicago, and then I walked you to your gate. We said goodbye, and then I
Oh
get,
wait, I forgot one thing. On
oh,
the way to the airport, right as we're pulling into the airport, there's these like big telephone poles in the middle of this like desert area, and there's this massive owl like perched on top of one of them in the middle of the day. And you were busy like trying to get all the boarding the check-in stuff sorted, and I just look out the window and there's an owl there, and I'm like, no way. And I took a photo of it.
and
It
you're
was just
right. It
wild.
looks like a fake owl. It doesn't even look like a real
Yeah.
owl. It's like somebody made a fake owl and put it up there, but it's clearly an actual bird. Crazy.
Yeah, and it was right in the middle of your like you were so stressed. You were like, oh, I can't check in. I can't check in. And I look up, and this owl is just like there, like looking at us.
So timely. Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot about that. You should add that picture in, by the way.
Yeah, well, that was pretty cool. So you get to Chicago.
So we
You
get
say bye to me.
yeah, so get to Chicago, say goodbye to you, walk to grab a coffee, walk to my gate. This is when the weirdest thing of all happened, which was I go up to get my boarding pass booked so I can get on the plane and go home to Toronto. And the woman at the desk looks at me, looks at the computer. She's typed my name in or scanned my boarding pass. And she's like, but you're already on the plane. And I'm looking at her. I'm looking at her like, no, I'm standing right here. Excuse me. And she says, but you're already on the plane. And I'm like, no, I'm right here. So I'm looking at her going, what is happening? And she says to me, but I can't find your name in the system because you're already on the plane. And also she just kept saying it. And also she pointed out that my boarding pass was 9D, seat 9D, and the person who had already boarded the plane that she thought was me was in 9D in my seat, right? So I just don't understand what's going on. And then she says, this person has the same name and the same boarding pass as you. Now, my name is Sinéad Whelehan. This is not a common name. It's a Gaelic name.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm Sarah Jones Crawford or something, right? So I'm just thinking this doesn't make any sense. And she keeps saying, it's the same name. She has the same name, the same name. So I'm standing there going, what the hell is going on? She runs down the ramp to the plane, goes up to the person who's sitting in my seat in 9D, asks them if their name is Sinéad Whelehan. They say yes. She comes back up the ramp to the desk, again, still totally confused, saying, I just asked them. They said that's their name. And I'm like, what? So then I'm really confused. And long story short, she calls over her colleague. And she and her colleague are trying furiously to figure out what the hell is going on. Meanwhile, she just keeps saying they have the same name, same boarding pass, same seat. And she's bewildered, right? So the colleague eventually figures it out. I'm allowed to use my boarding pass. And I'm just like, I have no idea what's just happened. So I walk down the ramp, get on the plane, go up to the seat. And the person who apparently was me is still sitting there. Yes, David, really. Yes, really. So the person who was supposed to be me is sitting there in my seat, 9D, and she looks like me. She's my height. She's a white woman with long brown hair and brown eyes. Not the same name, but sitting in my seat, looks like me, was asked if it was my name, apparently said yes, apparently had the same boarding pass. Like, what the F? So we then, asked for assistance because she's like, no, this is my seat. And she moves to her seat, which is 19D. And then I sat down and I'm just thinking, this is really weird. Like something definitely weird is going on right now. And then nothing else happens. Everything's fine.
Wait. So did her boarding pass have 19D or 9D?
I don't know. I should have asked to see her boarding pass, but that felt like it was inappropriate. So I didn't ask. But still,
That's so
90, and
weird.
also 9 is 3 threes. And I have a thing about 333. Maybe that's too much analyzing. I don't know, but all the same, there you go. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so this girl gets up, she moves to 19D, I sit down, fly home, and as we're landing, I'm coming out of a nap. So I'm in that kind of liminal space. I don't know if I told you this part actually yet, Anthony, but we are landing. I'm in this liminal space. I'm coming out of this fog of having traveled all day and just the incredible experience of CITD and the energy field that I'm still feeling like I'm in. And so I'm in this liminal space, and I have this really strong visualization that I've had many times before, which I never thought much of until it happened this time because I wasn't thinking about them. I was just coming out of this nap. I was groggy. And I have this really strong visualization of being in a black vehicle, being taken to some kind of base, feeling extremely anxious to get there, like really, 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 really wanting to get there, and then getting there and like bursting through the doors and running down the halls. And finally we get to this room, and there's ETs in there, there's extraterrestrials in there, and I run up to them and throw my arms around them, and I start sobbing. And on the plane, I'm
Oh my
actually
God.
sobbing. Yeah. So that was unexpected and unexpectedly emotional,
Wow.
and feels like it might have possibly been in my mind because of what had happened with the girl, but I'm not going to analyze that. I don't really know for sure. It was just interesting that it came up all of a sudden like that with so much emotion that I cried, you know.
It would have happened with a girl? What do you mean by that?
The girl who was in my seat, the person who looked like me who was in my seat, that felt just very strange, like as if it kind of felt like I wasn't supposed to leave or something, and it felt like somebody was playing a joke on me, like it was a practical joke or a prank, as if there was a sense of humor behind it. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. All right. So, on that note, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap things up? We're at 3 hours now, so we've been going for a while, but this has been amazing.
It doesn't feel like 3 hours. It actually, yeah, it really
Yeah.
doesn't. This has been great. Thank you for having me, and Anthony, and initiating this conversation. It's been really great to talk it out with you.
Of course. And the rest of these will be with both of us, so
Yes,
looking forward to it.
yes, me too. Very much so. I don't think I do have anything astronomical to say right now. There's a million stories and things to share and perspectives and ideas, but we're going to do that with the podcast. So I think
Yeah,
I'll,
we
I'll
are.
hold back for now. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a lot of great ideas, mostly coming from Sinead that I can't wait to come to fruition and share with you all. So yeah, get ready. It's going to be an exciting next few months coming up for sure.
Yes.
So yep, I will post the links to a lot of the stuff that we covered, some of the websites, and I'll repost like the production of this after I do some editing and add some of the photos and imagery that we talked about, and hopefully we get the blurriness to drop. So
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It could be my
that's
my
okay.
Wi-Fi for sure.
That's all right. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for anyone who stuck it out with us through the end. If you're watching this later on, thanks for checking it out. Please be sure to subscribe. We're going to be changing our some of our handles, some of our pages as well to fit with the change in name. Our logo is temporary. We're going to have a new logo coming up soon for Fire in the Cosmos. But please subscribe, like our videos, our channels, and share with your friends. We were just getting started, and now we're really just getting started. But we hope to be getting the word out there pretty widely and helping move the dialogue forward on all these topics.
Yeah,
So can't wait. I'm excited.
me too. Thank you, everybody, for
Awesome.
listening. I hope it was mildly entertaining at best.
I think it was. Thanks, Sinead, and thanks everyone. See ya.